Hello, everyone. Good morning and welcome to this amazing AI and education event, Challenge Accepted, which is going to be amazing. Well, no, good morning, people. That would be the Karen avatar version, you see? If it was everything run by AI. But luckily, I'm still a human and you guys are too. So, why don't we do this my way today? I don't know if you know this, but I come from Cartagena. So I bring all the Caribbean flow from Colombia, you see? So I want you guys, let's do everything my way today. Listen, my mom taught me this lesson when I was very little, and you probably know it too. You will always receive back from what you give. You see? So if you receive me this way, I promise I come back to the avatar version. But, that's not me. So let's rewind and start again. I'm gonna, go out and I will introduce myself. But listen, I will make people uncomfortable at this point. So I need everybody standing up. I need everybody clapping. I need everybody excited. You see, almost as if you're seeing here your favorite singer. You see? So, hold on. Okay, people, give it up for Karen Carvajalino. Good morning, DC. Okay, now I feel it. All right. Okay. Now you may all sit. Now I feel, I feel better. Now I feel like we have an attitude, the right attitude and mindset to start talking about AI and education because most of the conversation is going to have to do with the attitude with which we see and we speak and we learn about these amazing panelists and speakers we have today. My name is Karen Carvajalino. I am one of the Carvajalino sisters. These are the other two sisters, in case you didn't see them. And I am the co-founder of Beast Nation, and I am truly excited and honored to be here today in this that we have called AI and Education Challenge Accepted. And that is more than just a title. Today, we're going to start asking very important questions. And not only we're going to start, analyzing them, but actually answering them. Una nota especial, hay traducción. Aquí están los auriculares, los audífonos si necesitan para poder seguir en su idioma favorito, preferido, la discusión que vamos a tener el día de hoy. And this is the program, in case you want to scan it and have it there and know what is it that's going to happen today in this amazing stage. Today, this event is being co-organized by the Inter-American Development Bank and the Beast Nation, and we have brought together innovators, youth, policymakers, changers, everybody from across Latin America and the Caribbean to really get to know and analyze very important questions. How do we prepare students for a future that is being updated in real time? Are our institutions, our schools, keeping up? Our thinking, is it keeping up with this world that is changing quicker than ever before? How about our teachers? Will AI replace them or help them become better and will help them be more impactful? What is the role of policymaker in a world where technology advances way faster than regulation? How do we make decisions today that will still make sense in 5 years from now, or 5 months, or 5 weeks? This is the type of things that we are going to start talking about today. We bring together voices from 7 different countries. These are our amazing speakers that you're going to get to see today, and each of them brings one different piece to this puzzle that's going to help us resolve and talk about one critical question. Will artificial intelligence help us close the education gap, or will artificial intelligence make it even wider? That is the one critical thing. And this event is just not another AI conference. This is a region-wide response in order to tackle and get into that one critical question around AI and education. I am very honored to be here, very proud to stand alongside with other amazing speakers that I showed you that have accepted this challenge. My sisters and I have accepted this challenge as well, and I hope you do too by the end of this event. So to kick things off, please help me introduce my other sisters. Let's start with Stephanie, okay? But I want you to help me bring them into the stage with one specific clap because I do things different ways, right? So I call this the aplauso de motivación, all right? So when I count three, you're gonna help me do three claps. Boom, boom, boom. Okay? That I call the motivación, the aplauso de motivación. Okay? So let's welcome Stephanie to the stage with one motivation clap on the count of three. 1, 2, 3.
So good. Okay, so if you think Karen is cool, I'm the youngest. That means the best sister, right? That's what I've been told. Just kidding. They're amazing. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about who are the Carvajalino sisters and why are we so obsessed with education. And the reason it's because we are the result of a different type of education. When we were 6, 7, and 8 years old, we started selling chocolates door to door in Barranquilla, Colombia, like any other kid that sells something in school. And then my parents were like, oh, if you're going to sell chocolates, you should create a business. I was 6 years old. My only concern was if I could eat whatever was left in the pot at the end of making the chocolates. He said yes. So I was like, okay, we are doing this business thing. So we started doing the business thing. Had no idea what was going on, but I was the sales executive. Karen was the general manager. Daniela was the commercial manager. I still don't know why I was not a manager. I was the sales executive. But today, 20 years later, I understand that it's because I love sales. So I was like, okay, perfect. So we started selling chocolates door to door. And after a year, one of our neighbors said, I'm not going to buy another chocolate. And I was like, what do you mean? And he was like, no, I mean like a sugar coma with these chocolates every other day of you coming here. But I'm going to invite you to my MBA class to talk about the family business. And I was the sales executive. And I only had one concern. I was like, listen, I was 7. If we go to this MBA class, are you going to buy chocolates? And he said, yes, I'm going to buy 30 chocolates. So I was like, okay, perfect. We are going to the MBA class. And then I get home and I tell my dad, I'm like, we are going to this MBA class to sell chocolates and talk about the family business. And the only question that my dad had was, do you know what is an MBA class? And I was like, I have no idea, but they're buying 30 chocolates, so we are going to that MBA class. So that was our first speaking engagement. When we got there, everyone thought we were super cute, but they didn't realize or didn't think that we were going to add any value to their lives. At the end, everyone was super motivated and engaged and, motivated to start something. So we were like, oh my God, if we can change someone's perspective, then we can change the world. So 20 years later, we have been, this picture is terrible, but I mean, it is what it is. That was us giving the speaking engagements. We have been in 25 countries talking about family businesses. At the beginning, we were talking about the family business, but my mom is an educator and my dad is an entrepreneur. So we grew up in those two worlds. How can we connect education and entrepreneurship to transform the world? We wrote 4 books. The first one is called Parents and Coaches. And everyone asked, why not how to become a young entrepreneur? And we were like, because if we didn't have a different type of education from our parents, we were not going to be able to do anything that we have done today. We have today, well, what started as chocolates, if you might be asking, no, we don't sell chocolates anymore. So that turned into an education group where we have Biz Nation, that it's an online learning platform where we have around 100,000 users in 9 different countries. We have also the biggest entrepreneurship festival. As you see in this video, we bring 14,000 youth to talk about entrepreneurship and education. Yes, it looked like a concert, but it's 4 hours of pure content because, as you see, we need to make education different and appealing for youth. And finally, what we are going to talk about today, it's mainly the case study. It's our school. So we have a school, K-12 school in Cartagena, Colombia, but I'm not going to tell you about that. I'm going to let Dani, the sandwich sister, the middle one, yes, talk about the school in Cartagena, Colombia, but we're going to receive her with another clap that is my favorite, that is called the oh la la. Something, yes, just like that. So we're going to do, when I say, let's receive Dani with the oh la la clap, you're going to do like this. Oh la la. But listen, if you do oh la la, it doesn't work. Okay? So we are going to receive Dani with an oh la la clap on the count of 3. A la una, A las 2 and 3.
Thank you. I actually came up with that applause. So just to be clear, that one is Karen. I am Daniela, and that one is Stephanie. Because people, try to confuse us sometimes. But now let me take you to Cartagena, Colombia, to Cartagena International School. Our school, where 900 students learn math, science, and all the other important subjects, but they also learn entrepreneurship, financial education, emotional intelligence, and AI as part of their curriculum. At Cartagena International School, we're different, but not because we have the latest tech, but because we use it with purpose, because we use it with relevance and with urgency. We graduate our students with an AI certification, and they are not only learning about AI, they're learning how to build projects that can actually change the world and create an impact by applying AI. And this is what we've done in the last few years. Well, actually, more than a decade. But now I want to show you how we're doing this. And we're doing this by connecting our students to something greater than themselves, to connecting them to their lives. So, not a screen, but their lives. And I want to give you two clear examples of how this looks like into practice. This one is actually one of my favorites. We have a group of 14-year-olds that are working on an AI algorithm to detect myeloid leukemia in early stages. I actually love this project because I have seen how students go to the hospitals and see kids that are battling with this horrible disease, and then they go back to the classrooms to train an AI algorithm. They're not learning for a technology class. They are learning for their lives. And this has been possible because we partner up with an amazing Colombian startup called Arcangel AI. And honestly, I have seen the impact of the project and it's truly amazing. Now, another project, this is a voice-based mental health assistant. Basically, this is an Alexa for teens' mental health. So our kids were saying, you know what, we don't want to talk to counselors because they don't speak our language. And this is literally the words that they use. So that what they did is they built a robot that is trained by top counselors. So the knowledge comes from top counselors, but it actually speaks and communicates the way that they communicate, and they feel comfortable talking to a robot. So they knew they were struggling with their mental health, but they didn't want to communicate in the normal way. So what they did is they built their own robot in their classroom. But again, they go to math class and then they talk and they learn about how to apply math to their project. This is relevant to their life. So they're not learning just to build a prototype, but how to solve problems. Our students are not just preparing for the future, they are actually building it, they are creating it. And they're not using AI to replace anything. I keep hearing the whole replace, replace. They're building new things, things that were not created before, but that are actually relevant. Our students and actually all the new generations were born in the middle of the AI revolution. So we said forbidding AI or just ignoring that is happening is just not gonna be the way that things are gonna work. So today we just wanted to show you this example in Cartagena. You're all welcome to come and visit Cartagena. We love visits, but also to show you other examples of wonderful, amazing people that are creating around the world. So are you ready to see these other examples? Well, but before we get to the solutions, why don't we take a bigger dive into the challenges? So we wanted to hear, we wanted to see how students and how teachers in Colombia were navigating these times of change. So we went to the communities, we went into the classrooms, and we asked them. And the answers were amazing. I mean, it was a great exercise. Now, I don't want to tell you, I don't want you to hear from me. I want you to hear from them. So let's take a look.
La inteligencia artificial está transformando el mundo. En solo 2 años, su adopción llegó al 40% en Estados Unidos, 2 veces más rápido que Internet. Sin embargo, en América Latina y el Caribe, el 40% de los estudiantes no tiene acceso confiable a Internet. Visitamos una escuela en el campo y otra en la ciudad para ver qué piensan los estudiantes y maestros sobre la inteligencia artificial.
Para ti, ¿la inteligencia artificial qué es?
No tengo idea. Se trata de lo mismo que viene en la conectividad a Internet. ¿Tiene que ver con eso?
Para mí la inteligencia artificial es como, digamos, de los robots que pueden ayudar a hacer unas cosas pues, que no podamos hacer nosotros los humanos.
Es como un pato unicornio. No, no existe. Solo es que lo inventan.
con computadores o con teléfonos.
¿Es un campo de la informática?
La inteligencia artificial es una herramienta que facilita muchos de los procesos que se hacían antes tecnológicos.
Sé qué es, pero mayormente no me gusta utilizarlo.
La inteligencia artificial son muchas aplicaciones, muchas formas de mirar el mundo.
La inteligencia para mí es poderme
Reinventar.
¿Has usado la inteligencia artificial?
La verdad, muy poco.
La he usado como un recurso pedagógico en el aula.
Para apoyarme en algunas tareas o en algunos trabajos o cosas así.
He hecho uso de ella para desarrollo de tareas o preguntas un poco complejas.
Sí, creo que es una buena aplicación para aprender.
¿Qué necesito? ¿Resumir o sacar una información en concreto?
No, nunca.
Mi visión es tratar de llevar esa inteligencia artificial a los estudiantes, pero de tal manera que no se pierda la visión que se tiene sobre la importancia que es el proceso educativo.
¿Cómo te parece la inteligencia artificial?
Pues bien, creo que para ayudar a los humanos.
Siento que tal vez uno no saca todo de sí mismo, sino espera que la inteligencia artificial lo ayude y tal vez uno no aprende.
Los estudiantes se están volviendo más perezosos.
La explicación no se va a quedar en nuestra mente, sino cuando se nos olvide, no. Volvámoslo a buscar acá y ta.
Trae cosas buenas, como también puede generar cosas malas.
Es una gran ventaja.
A veces uno siente miedo de enfrentarse a esa inteligencia artificial.
A mí no me causa miedo, me causa curiosidad.
Pues suena como interesante, la verdad.
Porque para que ella funcione yo la tengo que entrenar.
¿Te gustaría que un robot te diera clases?
No. Pues sí, sería muy chévere, ¿no?
No consigo cómo una máquina puede llegar a reemplazar a un ser humano.
Eso sería muy raro, la verdad. Porque los robots se dañan con agua. Porque si se lavan las manos y le enseñan a los niños a lavarse las manos, pues obvio, se va a morir.
Hay algo que el tutor artificial no te va a dar, y es la parte humana.
No pueden reemplazar las personas.
Nunca va a tener ese sentido, esa esencia y esa manera de explicar y esa manera de profundizar que la de un ser humano.
¿Qué crees que se necesita para implementarla?
Es difícil hasta la conexión a internet.
No se acoge al contexto en el que estamos.
A nosotros al campesinado también el internet nos ayuda mucho.
A veces sí hay mucha resistencia justamente porque no contamos con los medios tecnológicos para desarrollarla.
Como que no la dejes entrar, como que cerrémonos aquí porque es la amenaza. No, es cómo tú la transformas y siempre tu inteligencia está por encima.
Tenemos que comenzar a prepararnos más sobre el uso de la inteligencia artificial porque es que el mundo cambia.
Como unos talleres donde primero le ayuden a uno como a quitarle ese miedo.
Precisamente porque quienes tengan acceso a ese tipo de herramientas, pues obviamente van a poder tener un avance en cualquier disciplina. Mientras quienes no tengan acceso y desconozcan en sí la herramienta, se van a ir quedando rezagados de todo el proceso educativo.
Si se rompiera esa brecha, o sea, llegaría y te aseguro que acá sería un boom para ellos.
Como si tú estás haciendo una cosa que es importante y tú no puedes hacer la otra, pues el robot te puede ayudar.
I think this video deserves a big round of applause. These were in Colombia, Colegio Jaime Garzón in Sumapaz, and also Colegio Paraíso Mirador in Ciudad Bolívar. And I think it was actually great to get to see what they think, how they feel, what, the fears they have. And it's important also to bring that into this conversation.
We just heard some amazing voices from our students and teachers in Colombia. To build on that, we now turn to our fireside chat, embracing AI as an educational ally. As AI begins to take on tasks that were once led by humans, can it truly replicate empathy, critical thinking, or connection? What does this mean for the future of education? This conversation will explore key questions around responsible governance, equity, and how AI can support, not replace, teachers and systems. So please join me in welcoming Seiji Isotani, professor at the Harvard Graduate School of Education and president of the International AI in Education and Society. Welcome, Seiji. Fernando Chapanic, director at the Sadowski Foundation.
And of course, our amazing moderator, Mercedes Mateo, Chief of Education at the IDB. Welcome, Mercedes. The floor is yours. Adelante.
Great. Great to be here. Thank you, Seiji and Fernando, for joining us today. And thank you, Hermanas Carvajalino, for the great introduction, and to the team that put together an amazing video as well. I'm gonna be sharing this space with two, I would say, brilliant minds. They have a lot of insights into artificial intelligence. You're so modest, so humble. So I truly believe you're going to bring a lot of insights into this conversation about artificial intelligence and education. And we all know that artificial intelligence talks about or inspires a lot of promises about how it can change the world of education, starting from personalization of learning, management systems, but also more efficient education systems, which we know that it's a challenge in Latin America and the Caribbean, as we need to generate more efficiencies and produce more for the resources that we bring into the system, right? But we cannot talk about artificial intelligence and education without also having the tough conversations about the things that are beneath these different issues. Some of the questions were mentioned by the sisters Carvajalino. So I want to bring a quote. The AI CEO of Microsoft, Mustafa Suleyman, recently told CNN in an interview, there will come a time where we will need to decide what does it mean to be uniquely human. This is at the core of the decisions that need to be made in our education systems. So let's dive into it. This is going to be a fast-paced conversation. We only have 30 minutes, now a little bit less than that. And let me start by one question for the two of you. What's one area where you see the most potential for artificial intelligence to improve education? Fernando?
Yes, thanks for having us. Just to be quick, I think the area with most potential is explaining kids how the tricks work. You know, not actually using. I mean, I do see potential in some experiences that suggest next exercises to perform and so on and so forth. But the area that I think most promising is explaining kids that, you know, artificial intelligence is more artificial than intelligence. It's just like an glorified version of statistics and probabilities, and it's a machine, and it's something that you can curse, and it's not a human being. And there's a lot of very bright people that put a lot of thinking in building this tool. Well, explaining the kids how the tools work, how this particular tool works, I think that is like freeing and enlightening, because it really presents you with something that you never thought before. You know, oh, so this is a way that I can create this amazing machinery. I think that will be liberating.
That's a little bit what we saw in the video as well.
Okay, thank you, Mercedes, for this great question, and IDB and for the organization. In a book written from Charles Fadell, he always says that we never get right when we try to predict things. So I'll try anyways, right? So I think there are two connected pathways when we are thinking about AI in education. First one is giving meaningful access to information. And the second one is augmented human capabilities. By meaningful access, I mean AI is transforming how we perceive information, how we create knowledge, and how we think about ourselves. So whenever we go to internet or whenever we start to interact with AI technologies, it actually has a loop. So we learn from them and they learn from us. So it becomes a completely different way of learning and actually transforming our way of seeing things and understanding things. So, and the more we understand AI, the more we understand how we interact with it, the better it becomes to actually, how can I say, it increases our biases as well. So this is one of the biggest challenges that we have right now. But the other way to think about is augmenting human capabilities, which means that it gives us the power to create new things and to actually make differences when we are trying to teach. So you can increase teacher capabilities to actually provide feedback for students, to understand students' motivation and support personalized learning and so on. So I think we have a great path ahead, and let's discuss about this.
Thank you both. And it's very interesting. I just want to highlight the connection between the 2 points, because it's very interesting that two people who from the region who've been thinking a lot about the connection between artificial intelligence and education are the two of them putting at the core of the response understanding, which basically means the uncertainty in which we are actually traveling this road with artificial intelligence. So thank you for that. Now, second question. When we talk about digitalization, there is an underlying belief that more technology will bring about better learning. However, history, and I'm proud to say that here at the IDB we're one of the first producing the first piece of evidence showing the impact of just throwing laptops to kids in Peru. So Elena is somewhere there and some other people. And so we know, based on that evidence, that just providing technology doesn't result into better learning outcomes. And so, at least until now, and I want to say that, Elena, because maybe we should revisit some of that evidence, because today seems, I mean, everybody seems to be very excited, and that's why we are organizing an event around artificial intelligence and education about the potential of artificial intelligence, as you was talking about, augmented capacities. And so the promise is really tempting. With AI, we might finally solve faster, more efficiently, structural problems that our education systems were dealing with. So it's basically going to be fast, cheap, and transformative. That's the promise. Fernando, what is your perspective on this? Is it realistic? What are the risks? 3 minutes.
Well, let me put a caution note on all the promises of AI. The first thing that I'm concerned is that when people talk about AI, they're mostly talking about LLM these days, and we just seem to hallucinate on the fact that LLMs hallucinate. Like it's like. So picture this. So this is Mike, my good fellow Mike. He doesn't have any certification, but he's so savvy. Yeah, and his responses are so catchy, and because he's on meth, he's available 24/7. He can chat with a lot of kids. Would you put Mike in schools? He's almost always okay. He's almost always certain, except 30% of the times. But but what about the real teacher? Why don't we let Mike in? But if Mike is a computer, then we seem to think everything is okay, and we have, I mean, I think that there's like this evidence imbalance where we think to believe that, well, how it cannot hurt, but when we try to bring these ideas of let's do it fast in other urgent needs of society, for instance, it has been used in human resources in big companies. It has been used to decide whether people should be on parole, and we failed doing that fast with AI. We resonantly failed. It ended up in the newspapers, in the front cover of newspapers. So I don't see a reason to move fast, and I actually welcome this idea of let's collect evidence and let's make sure it works before bringing something into the classroom, because otherwise the risk is very, very high. And there's another aspect. As I said earlier, I welcome the use of technology, especially to foster, this mechanical part of learning. Whenever we learn, I think that broadly there are two things that we need to learn. One is critical thinking. Another is, the mechanical. We need to learn how to use the tools. And, technology can be an ally in learning how to use the tools. Yet critical thinking is another beast. It's a different animal. And for instance, applying critical thinking, I would say, are we not really too tempted on the cheap word of all those you mentioned? And are we not just trying to save a few bucks? Because if that were the case, I have another idea. If AI is so good, why don't we replace upper management on all the big companies? They will save between 50 and 20% of their operational cost. Let's tax them with all this money and invest more in teachers. This will be cheap. So this is critical thinking. This is like taking a question and asking whether, instead of what's the proper answer, asking, is this the right question? So whenever we are talking about technology in the classroom, we are forgetting about this other important part, and I think this is a big miss.
Thank you so much, Fernando. Seiji. We know, and we saw in the video, that basic technology infrastructure, stable internet, electricity, devices, is still highly unequal, both between countries in the region and within countries. And the reality is that in Latin America and the Caribbean, most public schools are actually lacking these basic conditions. So we're having a conversation about artificial intelligence. How do we ensure that the potential benefits of that technology don't leave behind the millions of children in schools that lack this basic technological infrastructure? What are the risks of scaling without addressing these structural gaps? And what do we need to do to make sure that artificial intelligence doesn't end up deepening inequality? And let me do quickly a follow-up question. If we take the flip side of that question, in the near future, will the true educational privilege be access to a high-quality tutor, or will it be having a AI tutor? What is the real privilege that you see in the future? And therefore, if technology is cheaper and humans are more expensive, just as Fernando was saying, would the advantage be? Because we are making the case in the first part of the question that the disadvantage is not having access to technology, but maybe in the future, the disadvantage is not having access to a human. So
that's a tough question. Well, let me say first, I second what Fernando said, especially in classes and places and communities that you already have access to teachers. I think those questions that Fernando brought are really important. To really think, is this AI necessary in these places when it is necessary? But when we go to underserved communities, that is totally different way of thinking, because there is no teachers over there. So we've been to so many different places in Latin America and India where you don't have teachers over there. So in the Amazon, we have many places where the only specialized teacher is in a computer, so in a TV broadcasting information. So in those places, is it better to have anything, something that helps kids to learn, or should be not having anyone at all with enough knowledge to support students? So I think it's a different process of thinking. And when I think in underserved communities, then we need to think about three things. First, people start to think about infrastructure first. Okay, so let's build the infrastructure to support technology, and then we build on top of this. And by doing this, which is the most policies in EduTech have tried to do that, it's a recipe for failing. because you don't think about the vision of education. What is important in terms of learning and helping students to grow and thrive. So instead of thinking about infrastructure, it's more interesting thinking about the vision and how AI can be developed to support that vision. So we need to actually redesign or rethink how we design AI technologies instead of just being throwing out, okay, so this is a new technology before WhatsApp and Facebook and social media and internet. So instead of this, we need to be more propositive. We need to try to design AI technologies that can actually help teachers and learners. So with that, I think we can reduce the gap. If we go with the infrastructure path, then it's going to be a totally disaster, at least in my viewpoint, because developed economies already have the infrastructure ready. And we've done an analysis with data from different international sources that shows that it's going to take 100 years to fill this gap, just in terms of infrastructure, which means that to have the access that we are having to technology right now for this developing community is going to take 100 years. And so if we wait 100 years to develop technologies with the infrastructure that we have right now, what's going to happen with this generation of students? So rethink about how we design AI technologies that can actually work in places where infrastructure and digital skills are not available, I think is the way to go. And the AI technology that we have right now helps with that. So it's just a way of us rethinking, okay, so if I don't have computers, if I don't have internet, can I design an AI technology for those places? My answer is yes. It's just a way of rethinking, redesigning AI technologies.
Great, thank you, Seiji. And now back to Fernando. Talking about, the speed at which things are unfolding and changing, and technology is moving much faster, and we saw it before, than regulatory frameworks. And so, but there is a fundamental question here which has to do with who decide what is good for the education system and for students and for teachers, right? So given that time is of the essence, as Seiji was mentioning, we cannot wait until all the evidence comes in, or the regulators make a decision about how are we going to, manage the system. So how do we strike the right balance? What kind of standards and safeguards should we put in place to prevent the risk that we were talking about before? 3 minutes.
Well, I think that because time is of the essence and money is of the essence, we should really be cautious, because just to give you an example, I was reading the other day an article of a system that allegedly works better than tutors, and actually their evidence, which was statistically strong, says that people on a standardized test will score, the ones that got tutors will score an average of 535, and the ones with the AI system 136. Yeah, just 1 point of difference. Is the money worth? So I think that, as I said, we should really be cautious here, and I'm really concerned also about the thing that you mentioned. I think that you strike like a really neural point, which is those of values. For instance, Argentina, a part of our land is in hands of an invading country, the Malvinas Island. In Argentina, it will be not only unethical but illegal to speak about those islands by the name of the invader, which is Falkland Island. Yet, I think that in the UK, they will think it the other way. So, is it a problem of biases? I don't think. I think it's a problem of values. Let me give you another example. Would you like an assistant to be machista? I think we will not, right? Yet, if we take like the strict value of the word bias, it means taking a biased sample of the population. I think we would all agree that unluckily I would say most of the countries in Latin America, most of the population is machista. So an unbiased system should be machista. We don't want that. We want a system that complies with our values. Which are those values? The values are decided by people in democracies. This is why we have congresses, why we pass laws, why we empower educational institutions, within the framework of democracy to decide society values. So this is a very complex discussion where we don't even know what the axes of the discussion are. Biases is a broad approach to that complex discussion. I'm afraid that if we rush, we are going to make really important mistakes.
Thank you, Fernando. Seiji, back to the algorithms and the systems, the management systems. The algorithms that run behind these kind of technologies are kind of a magic black box. And you are leading in Brazil a very impressive Sistema de Gestão Presente, which is run by the Ministry of Education, and it centralizes and integrates data for 47 million students across the country. Impressive. What structural transformations does this initiative imply for educational management in Brazil, and how does it integrate artificial intelligence technologies? How might this platform enable the unlocking of a new generation of AI-driven applications in Brazil?
Thank you, Mercedes. So for those who don't know, Brazil doesn't have information system that gathers all information about students, which means that the policies that we create is based on predictions, not real data. And what happens is, for example, we have a program in Brazil that delivers physical books to every student in the country. So we don't know where they are. So what we do, so we make predictions and send books everywhere across Brazil. So you can think about we have a huge error. I won't say how big it is, but we do. And using, for example, AI, we can reduce this error. And last year, it was about $15 million in savings because of just changing the model and using different features to make those predictions. And now with Gestão Presente, what we are trying to do is let's organize this data from different sources and create not just technology, but the processes necessary to collect those data as well. And what creates is the largest centralized database about students that then we can actually use those data to improve the way how we create technologies, AI-based technologies, to recommend policies to support students and teachers and schools in different ways, support policymakers with different data. They are more concrete than just predictions. And the challenge is, as Fernando was saying, it depends on the data we collect. And we want to try to be as comprehensive as possible. So putting 47 million students in our system and follow them throughout the years so we can actually have a history about what is going on with the students and schools in the country, so we can actually create better models to support policymakers. And one last comment on this is it's really difficult to organize this database because Brazil is a federation, So states and municipalities have different systems and different, how can I say, regulations and priorities. So it's being a mess, but we are being able to actually do things and collect the data and put there. And now we are in the process of thinking what information and what features are important so we can make better decisions.
Thank you, Seiji. Very impressive. And we are near the end, and I always like to surprise my panelists with an unprepared question. So here it comes. This morning, I asked ChatGPT the following question. What is the most provoking question I could ask a panelist about artificial intelligence and education? And so it gave me the following question for you two that you're going to have to answer in about 30 minutes because I was told that we have 1 minute left. 30 seconds because I have 1 minute left. If artificial intelligence can eventually teach better than most human teachers, more personalized, more scalable, and more cost-effective, that was ChatGPT saying, it wasn't me, what role is left for the human educator, and are we ready to radically rethink what we mean by teaching itself?
Why don't we start asking this question about other human endeavors, like running a company? Then I'm willing to answer that about education.
Nice. I would separate two things, content and the rest, right? So content, I think AI can do it, and in the future it's gonna do it better than us. But in terms, the other 80%, content is just 20%, the other 80%, then it comes the human part. So engagement, support, well-being, and so on. I think this is the way how humans, or at least education, could concentrate content and the other part, the human part.
Thank you so much. I just want to thank everybody, and with a reflection, a quick one. I think asking the right questions, as we know, when you interact with artificial intelligence, generative artificial intelligence, the right prompts yield the right answers. One of the things that I want to highlight from this discussion is that how critical it is that we ask the right questions about our education systems. And for that, I just want to make a quick advertising. Today, we are launching a book about artificial intelligence and education, where we are trying to ask the right questions and provide some answers or some guidelines to those questions. Thank you all very much. And thank you to the panelists.
Thank you, Seiji, Fernando, and Mercedes for this amazing and provoking panel that we had today. And since Mercedes is saying we need to ask the right question, I have a question. And that question is, who teaches the students, right? So what if schools had no teachers? Or like how we saw in the video, what if they have a robot teaching? We saw the concerns of the kids. What if the robot dies, right? But I think there's a lot of other concerns. And to answer those questions today, we have an amazing panel. I'm excited because I'm like here listening, taking notes, trying to present, it's just like so much information. I love it. And in our next panel, Who Teaches the Students, explores these timely questions and the evolving role of teachers in an AI-driven world. We are joined by 4 education leaders who are reimagining how learning happens. First, we have Mackenzie Price, co-founder of Alpha Schools and 2 Hour Learning USA. I'm gonna present all of the panelists, and then we're gonna give an hola la clap so they feel special today. Then we have Ben Nelson, founder of Minerva University. Catherine Benham, Strategic Advising Director at the National Student Support Accelerator at Stanford University. And last but not least, we have Bibi Groot, Director of Learning Science at AID United Kingdom. Ahora sí, on the count of 3, we're gonna give an hola la applause. 1, 2, 3. Hola la. Never mind, it was in the next page. Sorry. So we are gonna give a super amazing clap to our moderator, Ferdinando Regalia, manager of the social sector at the IDV.
Okay, thank you very much. A great pleasure to be here with this education leader, and I think you already put in place what Fernando suggested in the previous panel. Get rid of the manager, and that's why you didn't call me on the stage. It's a real privilege to be here today. I come from a very small village close to the village where Yannick Sinner was born as #1 tennis player in the world. Usually, we are used to answering questions with yes or no. So all this energy really shakes me up a little bit. So welcome to everyone to our panel, Who Teaches the Students? Today we are exploring a critical question. This is, in the age of AI, do we still need a human teacher? We already had a great conversation before. Let me start with a fascinating fact. Back in 1974, a New York teacher named Michael Freeman created one of the first robot teachers. It was a 5-foot-tall machine, just a little bit shorter than me, named Lichim, which was his name backward. And this robot could speak 6 languages, could store all the profile and characteristic of the students, and could prepare actually lesson target to the child interests. But it didn't survive. It was too expensive to maintain, and soon this great hope faded. Now, 50 years later, AI has evolved dramatically and entered our classroom. And as Mercedes was saying before, she used ChatGPT a little bit too much. I didn't prepare the question with ChatGPT. But ChatGPT and other can instantly create lessons, answer questions, and adapt to students' needs. So this raises really important question. What role should AI play in education, and where are human teachers still essential? All the research has been conducted, almost all the research has been conducted to these days, shows that technology works best when supporting teachers and not replacing them. But certainly, and we heard about this in the previous conversation, finding the right balance is difficult, particularly in a context like Latin America and the Caribbean, where you have shortage of teachers and also, in some cases, teacher quality problems. So I'm not going to introduce the panelists because they've already been introduced. They are really 4 great leaders. Welcome Mackenzie, Kathy, Bibi, and Ben. And I'm going to start very quickly with the first question for all of you. What was your most memorable learning experience? It was with a human teacher, a book, a technology, and what made it special? Why don't we start with Bibi?
Sure. So I grew up in the Netherlands, and my most memorable experience was with my art teacher in middle school, who was really challenging. He gave me very, very specific feedback on my technique, painting technique. So he was very demanding, but he also gave me a lot of support. And so now I recognize this as a great mentor, right? Very demanding and high support, created this feeling of authenticity and respect. And because of him, he gave me time to come into the art classroom every afternoon. I was always there, and I wanted to be there, and it was transformational.
Hello. Hi. I grew up in the United States, in Houston, Texas, and my experience was in high school. We were taking an intro to psychology class, and the teacher was very intentional about going around and gathering our birth dates, and then she handed out our daily horoscope for the day individually to each one of us and had us discuss was this relevant to us? Was this compelling to us? And everyone, hands down, absolutely, that is exactly who I am. And then she told us they were random. And that was an incredible, memorable learning experience because it was interactive, it was surprising, there was an aha moment, and we clearly all took a lot away from that. So
Thank you for sharing this, Ben.
I'll try to do this quickly. My most memorable learning experience, I'm a wine collector. And 15 years ago, before I started Minerva, I took a little solo vacation. I spent a week doing wine tasting in Chile and a week doing wine tasting in Argentina and Mendoza. And the Chilean trip, this was a few months after the earthquake, no infrastructure, no planning. I didn't speak a word of Spanish, sorry. And I was driving 1,500 kilometers, visiting 32 wineries in 7 days, knocking on doors, not being able to communicate with anybody, and all the rest. In Argentina, I had an unbelievable guide. He took me to 32 wineries across 7 days, drove me around, explained to me the history, introduced me to the winemakers, gave me behind-the-scenes tours, explained what they were saying. It was fantastic. Throughout the trip, I was taking notes of which wines to buy, to add to my collection. And I bought them when I came back to the United States. A few months later, they were delivered. When they were delivered, every single Chilean wine that I ordered, I remembered exactly where I was, what it tasted like, what I experienced, and all of the Argentinian wines were like blank slates. I didn't remember anything about them. That was the most memorable teaching experience I ever had.
Thank you, Ben. I asked you not to say controversial things. Now we have Argentinian and Chilean here. It's your.
It wasn't because of the quality of the wines.
It's your business when you leave the room. Mackenzie.
When I drink, I never remember anything. So there's something special about that. I'm a little bit different. I hated school. I absolutely hated school. I found it to be 13 years plus 4 more of kind of wasted time. And I was in a college class that was called The Press and Prestige of Vietnam. And we basically had to analyze articles that were written during the Vietnam War and then write about this. I had absolutely no idea what the class was doing. No idea. And none of my other students knew it either. So it comes time for the final, and we're going to have a 3-hour final that's all writing. And I'm going, ooh, what am I going to do? Now, I was a very motivated student. I wanted to do well. I was very grade motivated. So I'm like, I have no idea how I'm going to read, 5,000 articles that they've given me over this semester. What am I going to do? I went to the library and I got a book called The Vietnam War. And I crammed and read that book over about 2.5 days. I read everything. I went into the final and I crushed it. I got the only A in the class. Everybody else had basically failed. I got the only A, and my professor nominated me for an award within this department for this. Here's what I learned from that experience. One, you have to have a mastery understanding of something. Because I actually understood the Vietnam War from reading one book, I could take any article and analyze, oh, I know something about this, right? The other thing that I learned is that learning how to learn is a skill that we have to teach to young people. And unfortunately, the majority of that semester was a waste of time for me. And those 3 days was incredible. So this book absolutely got me an award that was there. And most importantly, helped me learn those 2 life skills.
Thank you, Mackenzie. I think we all have our own personal. I will tell you mine when we are spacing another panel. I'm going to follow up on your answer, Mackenzie. Your 2-hour learning model claims students master academics in just 2 hours daily with AI. So how does this actually improve outcomes? And is not that too much screen time for students?
So first, I'm going to tell you guys, there has never been a more exciting time to be a 5-year-old. And there has never been a more exciting time to be a teacher. And we are going to see that over the next 5 years. So as we ask all these questions about what happens to teachers, what happens to students, this is the most exciting time. Now, I will say, a lot of times people ask about the future, and the panel before said, what's the future? We're doing it now. We are doing it presently. Our students do all of their academic learning via AI tutor and adaptive apps that provide personalized learning. Our teachers do not teach any academics at all. Nothing. Everything is done through this computer. Now, as far as the academic results, in 2 hours a day, 25 minutes in each core subject, our students are learning more than twice as much as students in a traditional classroom. We measure that with NWA MAP testing, and they're doing it in a couple hours a day. The rest of the day, because parents do not want their kids to go home after 2 hours, the rest of the day, this is full-time school, we spend on life skills development, like the skills that I mentioned, learning how to learn, becoming an expert, giving and receiving feedback, leadership, socialization skills, all of that. Now, the teachers, to be clear, if you walk into one of our schools, you're not going to just see a bunch of kids sitting on iPads. You're going to see a lot of adults. The adults, the role of the teacher in the classroom has been completely transformed. Their focus is on motivational and emotional support and elite mentorship. They're the ones developing the life skills activities and doing that. It is critically important. That role of the teacher is absolutely important, but not in the way of teaching academics. It's on motivational support. And as a result, we can take our students, no matter where they come to us, 10th percentile or 95th percentile, and we can get those kids learning at incredible rates. We can do this across all demographics. We can do this with English as a second language. We can do this with kids that have learning differences. AI allows us to create a completely personalized experience that builds on not only the knowledge graph of a student, but also their interests. And it allows us to let our human teachers do what only humans can do, which is focus on that motivational support.
May I just follow up just very quickly? How do you do it when you have a short of teachers or low level of competencies on those teachers?
So, a lot of times the way that we think about great teachers is that they're subject matter experts, right? And one of the things that's changed is when we have the curriculum that's being taught through the personalized learning platform, it's no longer as important for our teachers to be able to know how to explain physics or be able to do math. What they need to be focused on is they love connecting with students. They love interacting with students. So there's a couple things that have happened in our model. One is we have people who are working in our model that wouldn't be caught dead in a traditional classroom because they say, gosh, it's an uphill battle, it's bureaucratic, it's this, or I don't have an interest in a specific subject. So I actually believe that it opens up the pool of people who want to work with kids. I'm an example of that. I would never want to go teach English or science or whatever. Remember, I was that kid who hated school, but I love working with young people and connecting with them and helping them. So it's actually opened up the pool quite a bit.
Thank you, Mackenzie. Let me come to Bibi. ED, company, uses what you call a human-in-the-loop approach. Am I right? Correct. What makes teachers truly irreplaceable, in your opinion? How is AI enhancing teaching practices and learning outcomes?
Yeah, thank you so much. Great question. So I'll tell you a little bit about ED to give you an understanding of how AI and tutors and teachers fit into our context. So we are a learning platform. We've been built over the last 10 years. We have about 175,000 kids learning math on our platform, and we build AI infrastructure for other organizations. And the way we deliver impactful outcomes is not direct AI to students. We use a human-in-the-loop approach. And I'll talk about two different initiatives that we're building out right now. First, we deliver instruction and diagnostic questions to students via an interactive interface. So that is a learning platform. Students do diagnostic questions, formative assessment. Every incorrect answer, you have a multiple choice question. Every incorrect answer is a distractor. It's linked to a specific misconception. So every time a student answers a question, we learn something about what they know and what they don't know and what misconceptions they hold and what is the critical path to achieving grade level success. So we built that unified knowledge graph that then goes to teachers, right? So we're building these interfaces for teachers where they can understand what are the common misconceptions within a classroom. Imagine a teacher teaching a class of 30 kids. This is really hard to do as a teacher, to deliver individual assessment to every kid and understand where they have their misconceptions. But our platform can help them understand pockets of misconceptions, which students need to be pulled together and kind of have that one-on-one for differentiated instruction. And also, what are the critical skills that they need to learn before the next lesson? So we call this tethered personalization. Imagine that you personalize all of the kind of the learning interface for kids, and then the teacher takes that and creates a unified experience in the classroom, and then it can go differentiated again. And that's one way that we deliver this insight to teachers so that they can teach better to kids. And the reason that we've gone this approach is we're a UK-based organization, but we work globally. And in the UK, in the US, but everywhere else in the world, we have a huge problem with teacher shortages, right? We have a lot of non-specialized teachers entering the workforce. We have a lack of specialized math teachers. We have a lot of novice teachers who don't know how to create really specific, tailored content that is specific to the context and the lives of kids. And the AI doesn't know it either. And I think that's really important. The AI can create lesson plans, but the AI doesn't know the kids that are in the classroom. They don't know their lives, they don't know the context, they don't know their learning histories. So actually one thing we're starting to experiment with one of the frontier models is, can we give student inference data to the AI so that the AI can help the teacher create better lesson plans with the context of the students? And that's a project that we're kicking off now. So all of it is about looping in the teacher and enhancing their teaching practices rather than replacing it.
Great, Bick. And how much valuation goes into this?
Yeah, great question. So I was trained as an experimental psychologist. I run randomized control trials in schools. So all of these projects we run as randomized control trials. So students, we have control groups, randomized experimental groups, and we track learning outcomes in the long term. We're running a pilot right now where we are helping, where we're delivering LearnLM, which is an education-specific large language model. We're delivering that to our tutors. We have ED tutors who are helping students on the platform, and the tutors can then take the prompts from LearnLM and then it kind of help students in just in time. And we're evaluating whether or not that is helping the teachers, the tutors, whether it's helping them deliver better learning to more kids at the same time, and we're evaluating if that helps improve student math learning outcomes.
Very interesting. Thank you, Bibi. Ben, Minerva University integrates technology extensively, and it's a top innovator in education. Have you considered AI teachers, and what is your line between human educators and AI tutors?
You know, it's an interesting question because sometimes I think we're too focused on the teacher question when we talk about AI and less about the learner, right? I think if we take a learner-centered approach and actually take it one step further, which is to think about a societally centered approach, right? All of these conversations change quite dramatically. What does society need? Society needs citizens to be able to not only discern what they should be doing with their lives, but discern what is a good path forward for their community at large. We expect citizens to participate in government. We expect them to vote. We expect them to support particular movements from one side of the political spectrum to another and everything in between. We expect individuals to be able to discern what it means to make decisions that have nuance, that will optimize one set of outcomes versus another. In the pursuit of training humans to be able to do that, effectively to become wise, to become applied systems thinkers, and this is really what the source of education is all about, you then have to think about, well, what is the process in which we need to go about that? What we have reverted to in really secondary and post-secondary education, in high schools, universities, and beyond, is this bizarre approach to education that atomizes knowledge, puts it into separate compartments, and then expects the student to integrate them and use them in the future. And sadly, that doesn't work. So an analogy I like to say is that imagine if you were to go to university or a high school and say, we've decided to move the tennis program from the athletics department to the academic department. Teach kids how to play tennis. And the university faculty would say, oh, this is fantastic. We're going to produce the best tennis players in the world. We're going to develop a course that looks at the wrist and how it is that the wrist has various tension and mal-effects from repetitive stress injuries. Really important. Then we're going to have a separate physics course that looks at how balls bounce against different surfaces, different velocities, and they will really understand motion and Newton's laws and everything associated with it. And then we're going to look at the idea of nonverbal communications and psychology and how, you know, stares and grunts and intimidation works. And my God, by the end of this, we're going to produce phenomenal tennis players. right? Now, this sounds completely and utterly insane to anybody who would hear this description, right? Because we all know what it takes to learn anything. Spaced, repetitive practice, right? Practicing the actual thing you need to do, playing tennis, playing a piano, learning a language, and recontextualization, changing the scenarios in which you play. You play on clay, do you play on grass, do you play against somebody with a great serve, a great backhand, a great forehand, when the weather is still, when it's a little bit windy, when it's drizzling, when it's sunny. That's how you learn anything. We don't use that in education at all. At all. And then we wonder why it is that students graduate from high school, from universities, being effectively useless. Right? And we all know this. We all know that everything that we learned in high school, everything we learned at university, we do not use today. Right? What we do, we learned on the job. We learned in the real world. And maybe we got some training in schools to do that. So what does that have to do with AI and teachers? It has to do with the fact that real learning must be integrated. There must be a plan for the individual learner to figure out how it is that they can progress. If you have individual teachers assign different components of human development, the human will not develop. Just cannot happen. You need technology to be able to glue that together. AI is a relatively powerful technology to help with that glue. Now, with time, it could be that AI will become better and better and better and replace more and more functions of the human, and we should all welcome that. It could be that with time, it won't. It could be that the LLM models will reach a certain ceiling and that model of AI will not work and we'll have to go to some other model to get something. But eventually, technology will certainly take over more of the functions of teaching and assessment than it does today. But what's more important is to ground it in what it is that we're expecting students to gain. And then the technology will be designed as necessary.
Thank you, Ben. It's as always very thought-provoking, and knowing a little bit about tennis, you are absolutely right. There's no way of forming a champion that way. Kathy, you're working great expert on tutoring, and this is an area where, as a bank, we are investing a lot of effort to understand what works and how can we do better. So. How are you using AI for individualized learning? And what practices and challenges have you identified when implementing AI in personalized learning?
Great. Thank you so much for the question. And I just have to say how exciting it is to be here today and have all these wonderful minds in this room to talk about such an important area for our world. So in tutoring, and I guess in all learning acceleration, we've really identified through the research, not that it's surprising, 3 particular areas that are important that drive effective tutoring. One is the motivational part that really gets the student engaged. Another piece is the data so that the tutor can actually target the instruction for where that student actually is in that moment. And then the third is really the instruction itself, the quality of the instruction and the amount of the instruction, giving the student enough time and enough at-bats with high quality instruction. And what we're seeing in AI is not so much in that first category, the engaging, motivating piece, for engaging all students, and the really important part of that sentence is the all. I think one thing that's clear, and we did it wasn't actually an RCT, but we did a study early in the pandemic. In the US, there were a lot of offerings for districts and states where they could sign up and have all of their students have 24/7 access to homework help. And they thought, what an amazing equalizer. How equitable is that? And then the research on it shows that actually less than 20% of the students ever logged on once. And the students that logged on were those students who were not the struggling students, not the ones that you really wanted to reach the most. And so that is not an AI example, but it is an example of what the lack of human connection can mean to student engagement and student learning. So in the other two buckets, we're seeing more promising pieces, and some you've already alluded to in your talk. But the first one I wanted to share was Tutor Copilot, which sounds a lot similar to what you're testing as well. And it's an AI tool that is available to tutors in real time during the session. And it provides AI-generated but educator-curated suggestions for the tutor to help when a student is struggling. And this one was an RCT. And the exciting part of that was that the students that were partnered with the tutors who had access to the Tutor Copilot were 4 percentage points more likely to master the content. And the most exciting part is actually the least experienced tutors. Their students were 9 percentage points more likely to master the content, which shows you that you can, if we can have a Tutor Copilot available, we can expand the universe of tutors just dramatically, which would solve multiple issues that we have. So that's one. I know that we're running out of time, so I'll just share one other one. But there are multiple ways in which AI can support the tutor in their instruction and in the data analysis. But also, there are important AI tools that can support and ease implementation. So what we have found in our research is that students who participate in tutoring during the school day are far more likely to grow than students who participate outside of the school day, not because it's magical, those 9 to 3 hours, but because they're there more. And so they have more at-bats, they have more experience with their tutor. So one of the things we just researched was an AI-driven scheduling system. And what that, for us in the US, changing the master schedule to allow for tutoring to be into the school day is one of the biggest barriers to implementing tutoring for all students. And so this AI tool significantly reduces the amount of time and the frustration in developing a schedule that will adapt for that. So I know we're running out of time.
No, but those are really, these are the practical experience we really want to learn, and thanks for sharing. I would like to invite the audience to get ready for some questions. We're going to have very little time. Maybe while you prepare yourself, 1 minute each, a common question for everyone. I was watching the video at the beginning and the discussion on the panel. I almost got worried that human interaction is going to become a luxury good for the best students. So what do you think about it? Best students in the best schools. So the best schools, the best segment of town, etc. What do you think about that and the risk of widening the gaps?
Well, the risk is real. There is no question about that. I mean, we're already seeing surveys in the US where less poverty-stricken areas have far more access to AI than others. And that's the real question. The last thing we want this to do for our world is for those less resourced to be in front of a screen, while those more resourced to have human connections. And so I think one of the best things, or two of the best things we can do to address that is really making sure that the R&D is focused on solutions and the right solutions. I think people have already spoken about asking the right questions, making sure that the R&D is focused in ways that we are able to reach all students. And then the second one is convenings like this. I mean, this is the way we're going to solve it, is together, not separately. And bringing everyone together around these questions is, I think, going to take us a long way to making sure that this is an effective and accessible technology for all.
Thank you, Kathy. Maybe Mackenzie, want to share your thoughts? And then
yeah, this comes back. I didn't really answer the screen time question. I very much believe not all screen time is equal. There's a difference between doom scrolling TikTok and getting personalized one-to-one mastery-based tutoring that's delivered from a screen. And I would argue that is way more valuable than sitting in a class dead-eyed trying to stay awake. listening to a lecture-based model. And so what we're seeing is that by compressing the time it takes to do academics and do it well, it's opening up way more time for human interaction and way more time for teachers. We've implemented our 2-hour learning program in a charter school, very, very low socioeconomic class, low parental engagement, 30% ESL, 100% Black or Brown students. All of the students were in the 10th percentile or below at the beginning of the school year. Those students will be at the 50th percent above, all of them, by the end of the school year, and we believe we'll get them to 90th percentile in the afternoon, in 2 years. But on top of it, in those populations, it's even more important that they get the human interaction, and AI is enabling us to have more human time because the teachers have time to do one-on-one connections, to get to know students, to work as mentors and role models. I can't pretend to answer, technological things other than, we're doing a program in Malawi with refugees there that we're following Starlink. And so as adaptivity becomes more and more common, I believe that this will be able to follow.
Thank you, Mackenzie. Ben.
Yeah, I'll give a bit of a different prediction on this. I actually think that with time, that will absolutely occur. The access to human teachers, etc., will become the privilege of the rich, and the rich will decline because of it. The reality is that human beings are terrible at their jobs by and large, right? And in a normal distribution, as all large populations fall under, what happens is that the vast majority of instruction, certainly in education, is ineffective. If you replace that with a highly effective option that is machine generated, again, in a scenario not of AI today, but where it will be in the future, it will become an enormous leveling field. That is then exacerbated by what it means to be productive as a human in a machine age. The disparity between a good worker and a kind of dumb worker in much of today's world is not that big. That's why, when Biff goes out and has his daddy get him a job from his golf buddy, and he shows up to work and he kind of sucks, it doesn't really matter. Doesn't actually affect the company, right? Because there's just a lot of noise in that, and the fact that he does a favor to a rich person helps the company out. In the future, the difference between an effective employee and an ineffective one is going to be 100x productivity, right? And therefore, the paramount value of education is going to be dramatically higher than it ever has been before. And to me, that's going to be a fascinating leveling field I will say when we get to that era.
Thank you, Ben.
Te amo, man.
Yeah.
I love it.
Okay, this was really interesting to hear all of these predictions. I'm gonna go back to a little bit of the grounding from my perspective. I look a lot at the evidence of where AI is implemented and what we know and what we don't know, and we mostly don't know what AI can do and what's the impact on our kind of emotional and well-being and social and competencies. And there was a recent study that I found extremely interesting where it was an RCT, so again you have people in control and treatment, and they were instructed to interact with ChatGPT and other models very regularly. And they found that the people who started using AI a lot for their personal questions, but also practical questions, they started to become dependent on AI and increase their sense of loneliness and reduced well-being. And I think that's really scary and something that we need to think about for students. We know also from very large-scale survey data that students, adolescents, are becoming more and more lonely, higher incidence of anxiety. Students are meeting up with their friends outside of school less and less. In 2010, it was 44% of middle school students said they met up with a friend every single day. Now it's 32% and below. So it's reducing massively. We cannot let AI replace our human connections. And second thing I'll say on that is we need to evaluate. Whatever we do with all of these AI models, we need to evaluate what works, and we need to do it in an equitable way. So we need to look at different student populations, what works for whom. and focus on the things that work and don't replace human interaction.
Thank you, baby. And these messages come through very loud in the first panel as well. And as well as we have a very short. Is there the fastest AI? Yeah. Could you introduce yourself? And is there? Yeah.
Hi, yes, I'm Maria Sierra, and I actually work with organizations helping them use technology and AI so they can amplify their missions. And I'm an AI optimist with caution. So that's where my question comes in. I actually think that AI can be a fantastic thought partner and help you enable critical thinking if you use it well. If you tell them, okay, ask me the right questions to prepare, or how is there a flaw in my argument, and that's the way I use it. And I love the angle of focusing on learning. So my question is, how can we use AI to enable learning? And we have to think of like very basic principles or frameworks to, or boundaries. What are the boundaries that you would recommend? So how can we, like the key components to help it to focus on augmenting learning, and if there are any boundaries that we need to consider?
Yeah, sure. I will say one thing. For effective learning, you need cognitive effort. You need to struggle, and you need to persist through difficulties. And when learning happens is when you get stuck at something and spend time struggling through finding the answer. And in a lot of recent trials, when students have access to AI to learn, they get really high scores very quickly, but actually their confidence and learning doesn't increase. And that's because they get the answer really quickly without needing to go through that tough cognitive effort part. So I am also actually an AI optimist. I think there is a lot of potential, but I keep saying these kind of tough things about AI. But there is really this challenge, right, of cognitive effort, and you can kind of circumvent the cognitive effort if you just use the AI to get answers. We need to build systems where the AI doesn't just provide answers, it provides you with little hints, subtle hints, and scaffolds learning. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there.
That's one of the reasons we don't use an AI tutor chatbot. That's one of the functions of AI that is not part of it. And so everyone thinks Conmigo when they think of an AI tutor. Our AI tutor is running under the scenes because we call our 2 hours of learning productive struggle, where we're making sure students are in the right level of challenge. If they're too challenged, their brain turns off. And if they're not challenged enough, they're coasting through. And so using the curriculum, I also am a fundamental believer that in order to really be a great learner and a critical thinker, you have to have tons of academic information in your brain upon which to draw from. And that's what I think the beauty of making sure that kids are effectively and efficiently learning. It just jams information into their head that then they can pull upon as they're incorporating that into real world projects and ideas and things that they're, businesses and things that they're planning the rest of the day.
I'll just add that if 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, whenever this age comes, and we are still learning biology, chemistry, physics, algebra, geometry, trigonometry, American history, European history, etc., this whole experiment will have failed, right? The idea that we have the same curricular goals, but now enhanced by some machine, will leave us all basically useless in the face of a world that requires wisdom and discernment. So without curricular reform, fundamental curricular rethinking, it doesn't matter if it's a human being or an AI, we're just being taught useless stuff.
And just to close us out, as I was mentioning before, there are a lot of roles where AI can significantly support accelerated learning and can support teachers to make the teaching profession a more attractive place so that we can also address the teacher pipeline. But it really, I have not seen yet how it can replace the engaging, motivating piece of that. And so focusing AI in ways that can support the collecting of the data, knowing where the student is, supporting the tutor or the teacher to help them meet that student where they are and help them improve their practice. Those are the areas that I see the most promise, and I see a tremendous amount of promise there.
I really want to, we are running out of time. Apologies for the question maybe during the coffee break. I think I learned a lot. It's a fantastic, fantastic panel. We talk about very strategic issue, but also very clear application. And I tend to believe that the truth is with both. I'm going to say along the line of the Barranquillas sisters, un gracias largo, with a strong applause for our
Thank you very much.
panel. Thank you very much.
I have one question for the sisters. ¿Puedo ser su hermana? You need a... Necesito una rubia? Sí.
We were actually in big need of that, McKinsey, so very welcome. Now let's give these folks another round of applause. It's really like seeing, you know, my idols all sitting together in one panel, and I think it's been inspiring and also very, it's amazing, actually. I have to pay attention and think again about the answer each one of our panelists. That's great. And what is even better is that we now get, you know, we spoke about who teaches the student, and we now get to speak about who manages the system. So again, we have some great panelists I would like to welcome to the stage. We have first Shivani Stump. She's Chief Innovation and Product Officer at Power School from the United States. Welcome. We have Fiorella Jaim, President of Ceibal from Uruguay. Welcome. We have Tiago Rachet, founder of Letrus from Brazil. I see you. And Marine Trosel, CEO of STEMI from Croatia. I hope I didn't kill your last name. That's okay? Okay, nice. And then to moderate this panel, we have Elena, who is the lead education specialist at the IDB. Please a big round of applause for them. And Elena, the floor is all yours.
Oh my God, I have too many things on my hand. Hello, good morning, everyone. I'm really sad you didn't do the clap thing yesterday at the rehearsal, because then I would have come out with my own clap. I want to clap. I'm gonna do that by the end of the event. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining. I would like now in this amazing panel to switch a little bit the conversation. We talked about amazing applications of AI for the classroom, and now I would like to focus on another crucial element, which is the implications of using AI for the education system. Because we saw many interesting applications, and you saw in the video, there was something that in the video they were showing in the beginning, at some point the students, they all say it's interesting, it looks like fun, but at some point they say it's not adapted to our context. It doesn't work in our context. And what is that context? That's what I would like to focus on a little bit, given that we have also representatives from the region, but the context they're talking about is students in Latin America and the Caribbean. 80% of them attend public schools. And public schools in our region face deep challenges. They face challenges to access computers, and in the video it was mentioned they still face challenges to access basic connectivity, more than 40% in rural areas, and they also face challenges to just the system as a whole to gather data, basic data that allows us to design applications. It was discussed how do you use data to design AI applications that solve the specific challenges that we have. We lack also institutional capacity to some extent to regulate properly the AI applications that are being developed at a really fast pace. And basic management and information systems in our region, let's say it, still rely heavily on paper. This is what we're talking about. And even those that are digitalized often have problems with incomplete data, biased data, and all these are like basic conditions that we call in the publication enabling conditions to even start thinking about effective and equitable applications of technology. And this is what the panel is gonna be addressing today. Now, that doesn't mean that there is not enthusiasm. I want to show just some quotes that the quotes, no, I'm going the wrong way, I'm sorry. Some basic quotes to show that there is enthusiasm, but there are concerns because these challenges that the systems are facing are real. We gather These are real quotes from policymakers in the region. This is Francisco de Souza, advisor to the Ministry of Education in Brazil, saying what we want is new tools to correct inequalities, not deepen them. In Argentina also, this is a former Minister of Education, Jaime Persic, talking about the emergence of ChatGPT, how to rethink technology, but in a region as unequal as ours, so important to contextualize these tools in the context of our region. In Mexico also, this is the current Secretary of Public Education talking about the widespread use of AI by middle and upper class students. We discussed that in the previous panel, compared to its low penetration in rural and marginal areas. In Jamaica, also policymakers raised the need to train teachers, of course, because they need to interact with these tools, not to replace them, but they need training, they need support. And in Dominican Republic, also talking about the concern about how do we distill all these skills into the current curriculums that are often outdated or they are separated, like Ben said, into silos. And we're talking about a technology that is capable of uniting these concepts, but that's not the way education systems in Latin America and the Caribbean work today. So, without further delaying the conversation, I am very happy to dive into these complex questions with this amazing panel. We thought about this panel about a mix between public and actors from the public sector and the private sector, because AI also implies inevitably that the public sector needs to engage and collaborate with the private sector. It's not something that the public sector can do on their own or the private sector can do on their own. So thank you for coming. I would like to start. I'm not going to introduce you because Karen did an amazing job doing that already. But I would like to start with a short question, 2 minutes each, just to get warm over here. What is for you, talking about just this question that emerges about inequality, what is the single most important shift that you think our education systems must take in mindset, policy, or practice to fully unlock the potential of AI to improve learning outcomes without deepening inequalities? Please, who wants to start? Maybe Shivani, let's start with you, please.
Yeah, so I work for a company called Power School. We operate in 100 different countries. We have 60 million students on the platform that we support. We've been around for 25 years. I just want to start with a really important point of data as we especially talk about policy and inequality and equitable access. As somebody said, I loved all of the panels and the conversations from this morning. As somebody said, artificial intelligence is actually pretty dumb. The intelligence in the AI really comes from the data, right? And that's why this is a critically important problem that we need to solve for, because we're a company that marries together the transactional systems that we deploy. So these are student information systems, behavior systems, learning management systems, et cetera. These are the systems that have been and help in an equitable fashion collect data from all of the different activities that happen in a school system on a daily basis. Across all of the data that we have, we actually have 5 petabytes of data within the system. And that really helps us understand the contextual context, that was just mentioned about what is really needed in order to personalize the journey for every student, and how can we apply that in a way that actually makes sense for them in a context-aware fashion. The whole conversation about inequities is a really important one, because we work with a lot of rural districts, we work with a lot of students, teachers, and even parents in countries where they don't really have access to a lot of this technology. And somebody on a previous panel said it really well. It's how we design these solutions. So it's not just about leveraging an off-the-shelf large language model, but a lot of what we do is, because of all of this data that we have, and the data now that we're able to synthesize with AI, we can apply this in the context of what's called an SLM, a small language model, or an offline model where you don't necessarily need all of the infrastructure, and can make sure that the AI is working in context or whatever that might be for an individual institution.
Thank you. Fiorella?
Hi, good morning.
I think the most important thing is to shift from the view of an education system to an education ecosystem. So now we need to partner with private companies. We have excellent companies here which we work with. But schools and ministers of education can do that. They are, it's very asymmetric, the relationship. And you have excellent companies and you have a lot of garbage that want to sell you garbage. Yes. So you need to have a specialized institution within your education ecosystem to leverage the playground. Otherwise, you will waste a lot of money and you won't have results. So I would say that the most important thing, the critical thing, is to have a specialized institution to deal with innovation in education, technologies, AI, such as Ceibal, for instance.
We're going to go into that. Please, Tiago.
So I think that talking about what is, I would say, most important to tackle and to understand how to use AI in education, in my point of view, is to shift from solution thinking to really problem thinking. We have and we need very clear understanding of the problem. And we usually think, how can I integrate GPT? How can I have a digital tutor to support my student? Those are the wrong questions. The question is, how do I solve the problem of literacy? How do I solve the problem of numeracy? How do I solve the problem of teacher motivation? Those are the real problems that we have to tackle. And when we have that open mind and we understand the context, such as half of the schools, they don't have the minimum infrastructure to run like streaming, then you know digital tutor is not going to help. Very basic data can give you answers to what's going to work or not. So I think that the first step is to really have a very clear understanding of the problem.
Thank you. Marin, please.
Hi, everyone. My name is Marin. My purpose on this planet is to make kids fall in love in technology. So I have some thoughts about what we are talking about. But do you want diplomatic answer or what I really think?
What you think,
okay.
Please.
So essentially, I truly believe that we need to redesign the whole system from the ground up. We need to take like Lego blocks, disassemble it, and totally assemble it again. I'll just do a short brief of history. When people invented the alphabet, so it gave ability to people to transform their thoughts from one mind to another mind. There was one great philosopher, Socrates. He was saying, this will destroy humankind. People will not be able to communicate and we will not be able to think very, very clearly. When people started printing books, one great philosopher, Descartes, was saying, this will destroy human mind. We will not be able to think and solve complex things. He was even saying that humans will be, it will not be good. When people started using ruler, I think, or calculator in mathematics, the teacher got fired because we will not be able to do mathematics anymore. When internet came, the same story. So whenever new technology emerges, people become very afraid. But what happens is that humans start doing things differently. And we need to start perceiving education from a totally different perspective. What's happening now with the development of AI is that access to knowledge has been democratized. That means that it's no longer important to measure what kids know. It's really becoming important what can we do with that knowledge. And this is just a small part of the problem, but I truly believe that we've been doing things in a wrong way from a long period of time because our whole educational system is designed from the completely other age. We need to change it completely. And what I see in AI education is that we are just doing things in a wrong way, more efficient, more effectively. But the real key is asking the right questions and starting doing things in a different way.
Thank you. I like that honest answer. And I'm going to ask you later, how do we do that? Because I know your work is related to exactly that, rethinking a little bit the skills that we develop. But I would like to go back to Shivani to talk about Power Body. Power School has emerged as a leader supporting K-12 student teachers and families through this personalized AI assistant. And I would like building that you tell us, please, with your coming from your expertise, deploying this type of very advanced tools in communities that lack, navigate these real constraints, infrastructure, reliable connectivity, under-resourced information system. What practical steps do you think we can take to make meaningful progress in such conditions? And more importantly, again, from your viewpoint as a private sector, how can we work together better, the public and the private sector, to effectively ensure that AI implementation is not only feasible, but responsible, inclusive, and sustainable in these low resource settings? It's a big one. I'm throwing you there. So,
yeah, that's a lot, really great question, and a lot in there to unpack. So as I mentioned, we work with 60 million students globally. We see a lot, everything from rural districts all the way to suburban. Everybody has a different sort of a challenge that we need to solve for. So let me break down your questions piece by piece, and try to answer them the best I can. First off, from a private sector perspective, and especially given our history in education, there's a lot that we know about what students, how students learn. There's a lot of conversation that's happened on personalization today. And let me ask you this question. Personalization is not a new thing in K-12 education. I think there's a lot of people here in K-12 education. How long have we been talking about personalization in education? Decades, right? I think even before I was alive. And so we should ask ourselves, why haven't we been able to make the progress that we expect to have been made with personalization? So let's just take an example, right? It doesn't matter the size of the district you are, where you are in the world, or any place for that matter. A teacher has 30 students in the classroom. How does she effectively impact the learning? McKinsey was a great example, right? Every kid learns differently. Some kids loved going to school. Some kids hated going to school. Some kids have their parents are working 2 different jobs. They may be divorced. They may be economically challenged. And that's why I think the one of the key things that we started off when we started this journey was establishing 2 real pieces, the data and the context, that I want to talk about. The second piece I want to talk about is regulation. How do we make sure that we as technologists, so my background is in AI, data and AI. I've been doing AI before AI was cool, when it was back to statistics and machine learning. But today when we talk about bias, we talk about hallucination, we talk about the risks of giving. A lot of us talked about ChatGPT and how kids everywhere, whether you allow them to or you don't, kids, teachers, everybody is using ChatGPT. They're probably putting PII information, personally identifiable information, in ChatGPT, which means that it's going out on the internet. Do they understand the threats and concerns with that? All of these things as technologists, before we wrote a single line of code in Power School, and I'll talk a little bit about Power Buddy that was referenced, we decided that there are 6 really important principles, being the leaders in ed tech and knowing what we know for the last 25 years, that we need to establish. The first one is human-centered. It was talked a lot about today, is humans need to be in the middle of everything that we do, right? We're augmenting their ability. I'll give you a few really quick examples. We've talked a lot about the teacher and the student. I don't want to belabor that point. When we did some of our research studies with some of the rural districts, we found that, let alone students, a lot of parents in the United States, in specific high free and reduced, high poverty districts in Los Angeles, in New Jersey, the parents themselves are not reading beyond a 5th grade level. So we're trying to, and we talk about lack of parent engagement, right? So it comes back to asking the right question: why do we have a lack of parent engagement, right? And so with all of these dynamics that I talked about, all of these dynamics about the student, all of these dynamics about the parent, about their households, about the teachers, the quality of the teachers, the experiences of the teachers, how many data points do you think, and that's why my answers are very practical and very data-driven, how many data points do you think we collect about a student in K-12 education today? Whether it's on pieces of paper, right? A holistic 360 view of the student. I'll tell you, 170,955 data points. And I'll tell you, no matter what we say about AI, I loved your point about the calculators were going to make us stupid, the internet was going to make us stupid, right? And see how far we've come. If you're productively, and that's what we're trying to do, is if you're productively able to take those 170,955 data points about the student, understand the biases, understand the context, right? The context in Latin America, very different, and different parts of Latin America, very different than the context in Europe or in Asia or in the Middle East or in the United States. Take all of that. There's no better transformative technology that is able to actually get us closer to helping the student, helping the parent, helping the teacher in whatever form that it manifests. And so understanding human-centered security, data privacy, data governance, how do we effectively leverage the data in a way that protects the student PII, provides the transparency and controls. Someone talked about the black box that exists with AI. It doesn't have to be a black box, right? It doesn't have to just work with large language models. We can take all of this and actually create the right 360 view for each of the stakeholders that are involved. And that's really what we're trying to do with Power Buddy, which is PowerSchool's AI assistant, because we believe that everybody deserves a buddy, right? And that's a little bit what we're trying to do with trying to take all of this data and making sure that everybody gets the right personalized experience. The last point I'll say, because I talked about context as well, and then working with the public sector, what we're doing is, and what we've seen to be a little ineffective, so let me give you an example that all of us can relate to. How many of you use Outlook or Microsoft Outlook or Gmail for email? I would say 100% of us, right? Would you say it's an effective use of using Outlook with Gemini or Gmail with Copilot? Or maybe another example would be have your Android apps on an iPhone. It's not, right? It's not effective because you don't understand the context. That's why what we fortunately have the advantage of is because we have 40 transactional systems that work in this K-12 space that can help a lot of the infrastructure problems that we're talking about as we deploy these systems to start collecting the data about what students do, what teachers do, what parents do. We can provide contextually relevant AI within the context that the student is operating in. So the AI knows that the student is a 10th grade student, they're struggling in these subjects, these are their interests, this is the career aspirations, and try to connect all of that together. So when the teachers are developing lesson plans, when the student is trying to learn and they're stuck on a concept, it provides them a more personalized experience, leveraging all of this data in the context that we have, while making sure that we're eliminating bias that exists. And the only way we can do that is working collaboratively with the public sector, with some of the public sector and the other private sectors. And the last point I'll say on that is we've done a lot of work with CEBAL. They're one of the largest deployments of our learning management system. 650,000 students using the platform every single day. And one of the recent experiments that we conducted with CEBAL was understanding sentiment data as a result of what the students and teachers were entering within the system, so we can detect things like bullying and things like that to help make sure that the systems that we're developing, we're continuously learning from them and applying them in the right context.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ivani. I was taking notes of the words that you use, regulation, data governance, design, switching to a problem-based thinking instead of solution. And all this requires strong expertise and institutional capacity in the public sector. That's why I want to go back to you, Fiorella. And of course, we know, everyone here knows Uruguay has gained regional attention. It's been a regional leader in the introduction of and the use of technology in education. And now we recently launched the Edu AI Lab initiative. So can you please tell us about this initiative? How will this help the education system build this capacity it needs to integrate AI meaningfully, not just at the classroom level like we saw, but across a whole education system like you've done previously in Uruguay? And how important precisely is this experience and this expertise that you have built over the years in the public system to use to tackle this new challenge that we are facing with AI?
Long question. Thank you. Yeah, these 18 years that we, 18 hours was my flight, no. 18 years that we have been working with the education system in Uruguay, trying to help them adopt technology to have better results, to solve problems, to solve different problems, and not to focus on technology, but on the results that we want to achieve, try to understand what were the concerns of teachers, what works, what doesn't work. You were saying about some studies, and we had like different phases in Ceibal, and of course laptops are not going to solve anything by themselves, but they are part of a human right and infrastructure. So it's like when you have lighting, like electrical lighting or running water, or well, you have to have Wi-Fi at schools. It's just one utility that you need to have there. But then after deploying laptops and Wi-Fi to all schools, we said, okay, but we need something else. And we have now the infrastructure to deploy other programs. So we partner with very strong private institutions, and we had an LMS, and we had a computational thinking teaching program that Fernando in the previous panel helped us launch. And technology helped us having teachers, for instance, from Argentina to teach AI to Uruguayan kids. And I would say that all the experience that we have in this field, and now with a new technology, very fast evolving, such as AI, and with the potential of solving different problems that it has, we were seeing that a lot of solutions were coming like in a box from the north to try to solve problems that we have in the south. So speaking with you and other multilateral institutions, we figured out that we needed to build a new institution, a lab, that could help all the region, not just Uruguay, to figure out what works, what doesn't, with evidence, with RCTs, and testing lots and lots of solutions. Some of them will work, some of them won't, but we have to do it fast, because students are already using these tools and are already needing to develop all these skills, and we need to be able to help them understand and take advantage of all the possibilities they will have so they can achieve their full potential. So that's one of the main goals of the lab.
Going fast, but taking the time to evaluate what works or not, like Fernando was saying at the beginning. Thank you. Now, I want to go also, Ceibal, we know it's a leader, but and it's kind of unique in its own, in its institutional design, but there are other success stories, and that's why I want to go to Tiago, which is, Letrus is really a key example, in our view, of a private sector actor implementing a large-scale solution in our region. So I wanted to ask you, from your experience, what are the key ingredients? Because we always say the public sector is slow, it moves slow, it's too slow to adapt to change, but you managed to make that work and scale your solution to in Brazil. So what do you think was key in making that relationship work? What conditions or attitudes are important to build trust, align incentives from the wrong sectors, based on both sectors, sorry, based on your experience?
So I think part of the success we have in Brazil starts with the problem. I'm going to highlight that because that sounds to be very obvious, but when we look at tech solutions, sometimes we don't really know why they exist, right? So it starts with a Portuguese teacher from a very high-performing school in Brazil that had experience with public schools as well. And his frustration, even if he had like the best infrastructure around him, is that he knew that for you to learn how to read and write, you need to practice, especially writing. Just like Ben said, if you want to learn how to play tennis, you don't watch a video of how to play tennis. You practice. It's the same thing, and the example I usually give is riding a bicycle. For you to ride a bicycle and to learn how to ride a bicycle, you start riding a bicycle, and then you fall. And then you learn, okay, why did I fall? I went too fast. Oh, I have to go slower. and so on. So practice is key for you to master language. And even though he had a lot of conditions, he understood as well that feedback was hard to give. It took a lot of time for you to give meaningful feedback to each one of the students. So looking at the problem, he's like, back in 2014, he was like, maybe AI can help. Maybe AI can be a partner of the teacher, understanding students' writing skills, writing profile, and then giving meaningful feedback when students are really active and engaged to the activity. So that was the vision behind Letras. And that's why it started to work, because students, they're like, whoa, I get immediate feedback. I know exactly what I got right and wrong right when I finished writing back in 2015. I'm not talking about GPT here, back in 2015. And that was magical. And then teachers, when we presented the solution to teachers, they're absolutely skeptical. AI will never be able to understand students' writing skills, forget about it. And then we showed the tool, what we had at the time. And they were a little bit skeptical. But then we told them what the benefit would be for them. And the benefit would be, we give you back your Saturday. And that was a killer. And we have, until now, huge engagement from teachers. So that goes to the second part of my answer, which is you really have to understand what's the benefit for each one of the stakeholders you're working with. And there's a fallacy in education that if you build something that's going to be meaningful for the students, everybody's going to engage. That never happens. You either understand each one's pain point and you address that, otherwise it's not going to work. So for us to work at scale, serving hundreds of thousands of students in more than 3,000 schools around Brazil, the key point is understanding what's your value proposition to each one of the stakeholders that are part of the system. And believe me, each stakeholder wants something different. They all have their own perspective, pain points, and needs. So I think that for us to work, we had to find this engine and how important it is for you to have an implementation model beyond technology. Technology is a very small part of it. And it's not about what, it's about how. And that for us is what allows us to reach this scale in Brazil.
Thank you. And back to the design, no? That you design something that is solving a very specific and concrete problem that will enable all the actors to see the value in that.
And it's important to say that we didn't come and say, hey, this is the plan, let's do this. We tested. We went through RCT. We went through implementations. We went through many mistakes along the way. So we can get to a place where we say, hey, we have data, we have evidence, we know how it works. But it took us 6 years to get to a point where we say, hey, we know what our solution is, and we know how to implement this with scale, with impact, in a very efficient way.
It was, it took time, but you wanted to get it right. That's kind of the message. Thank you. Marin, now another problem, let's say, that we have, or thinking about also how to rethink our system, that we're still thinking about, 1 minute, okay, no. Okay, I'm going to try to go faster than on the delivery of my question here, but content, what content we should cover, or the curriculum on what skills we should develop, and what skills we should develop today for the skills that the students are going to need in the labor market. And that's easier said than done. We know our systems struggle to do that and to do this fast. So I know that you have experience in that. How can the education sector work more strategically with the private sector to build that bridge, to really identify what are the core skills that the students need, and how to bring that to education system through practice, through feedback, and develop critical thinking and all these skills now that we see valuable, but that sometimes the education system cannot easily identify?
Yeah, that's a great question. And a lot of time, I spend a lot of time asking myself, what is the purpose of school? Or what is the purpose of education? Did we build schools because of grades and huge amount of bureaucracy? Did we build the schools because we need a place, or parents need a place to put kids for 8 hours? Now, what's the purpose of school? Especially schools were designed to prepare people to work in factories. Now the workplace have changed a lot. So what is the purpose of school today? My answer would be the purpose of school is to show kids what kind of future we want them to build and empower them to do it. And the purpose of school should be to prepare kids to be successful in the future. And being successful in jobs of the future is a part of that. But for schools to be able to prepare kids for jobs of the future, they need to collaborate with the industry. They need to talk with the companies. The problem is this is not happening. There's been a disconnect for ages. Why? Because schools and companies and the industry, they speak different languages. They think differently, they work differently, they don't understand each other. So what we said, okay, we said let's solve this problem by building that ecosystem that will connect schools directly with the tech industry and enhance collaboration. So what we built is a learning experience platform where we partner with leading tech companies, NGOs, even universities, and we provide them with the learning experience platform so they can create cutting-edge experiences that can be very easily implemented inside schools, focused on tech. So we want to teach kids how to build AI products. We want to teach kids how to build robots, but we want to teach kids how to use technology to solve problems in society. But another important piece is that if you want to be successful, you also need to include teachers and students into design process. So if you are building a company, the first rule is you need to always include end users into design process. Educational system is here for kids. They are end users. Why don't we ask children how to design experiences in the classroom and do it globally? So with our platform, we are trying to enable creation of learning experiences that are created by the industry experts, teachers, and students globally. So we are working with schools in Indonesia, in Europe, in US, now in Brazil, and we are looking at what works best and evolving experiences almost in the real time. Now we started a pilot with IDB in Brazil, and our goal is to have kids create AI solutions for local NGOs. We want to teach them artificial intelligence not only to write essays. We want them to solve problems in their local community. So we'll be pairing schools with NGOs, and the goal of children will be you need to create a solution that will help that organizations. And when you start thinking about education, when you remove the bureaucracy and when you start thinking, okay, let's design something that's meaningful for teachers and students, something that's challenging, something that's playful, but let's start creating experiences that they will remember for the rest of their lives. And that is, in my opinion, the purpose of education and what we are trying to do. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marvin. I love that example because it's very concrete on practical on how to do this in reality. Do we have time for Q&A? The boss, where is? One question. All right. Somebody has a burning question in the audience. We have time. Yes.
Hey, how you doing? My name is Jordan, and my question is around agency. So for an individual, a community, and a nation, how do you think about the AI systems and whether the large language models that powers them should be developed in the country or at least fine-tuned to a level that is specific to the context of the country? And how do you think agency is important at the individual level, community level, and nation level?
I'd love to take that question. 100%. I don't know how could you develop a system, otherwise it's not context aware, it doesn't understand what you're trying to do. So I would say it's important at all levels. It's important at the national level to understand the context of, and I think the first speaker, Fernando, was talking about that, right? You understand the context at the national level, you understand the context at, the state level, the local level, and going down to the individual level. I think that's the only way you truly get to personalization, whether that's the student context, the teacher context, the parent context, every stakeholder that's involved in this process. I don't think there's any other way that you can do that. There's a lot of work required in terms of fine-tuning the LLMs, right? And that's why in some cases I talked about it's not just large language models, it's also the small language models, because large language models are great at generic things. If it's a very pointed problem that you're trying to solve, in some cases, a small language model might be the right thing for you to do. It's more cost effective, and you can fine tune it, hyperparameter tune it, 1-shot, 3-shot, 5-shot. There's multiple different techniques of doing that. And then you can truly get to the right answers, because everyone's talked about this quite a bit today, right? If it's not developed in your context, if we know that students, if they have more of their voice and choice, they're better to learn. But the same thing goes for teachers as well. The same thing goes for parents as well. We've seen, based on data, if we develop things for our teachers have meaning. So today we have our AI deployed in about 600 education agencies, impacting over 4 million students. And what we've seen is that teachers are meaningfully saving 7 to 12 hours a week. I love your example of getting your Saturdays back. 7 to 12 hours a week. We're seeing higher engagement from students. And I think the reason why we're seeing that is not because of the tech, it's because the tech is in the context of what they care about. Not only are we incorporating their interests, we're also incorporating career information and helping them, especially at a high school level, connect to job opportunities that they care about, helping AI with mock interviews, right? Helping them connect with scholarships and internship opportunities and exposing them to things based on their GPA, based on what they've said that they're interested in, right? I think that's what causes the engagement. You know, I love to use this example, right? We've all, whether you're a toddler or an 80-year-old, how easy is it to use this phone? And this is what we mean by context, right? I live in Minneapolis. When I landed in DC, I didn't have to tell my phone to change the weather, the temperature, the time, right? Even when I pull up the Lyft app, it basically already has pre-populated, because it reads my calendar, my destination that I want to go to. I didn't have to facilitate any of that interaction, right? And I know some people might think it's scary and Big Brother, but I think that's the relevancy in terms of productivity that we're talking about. So I don't know, I'd love to hear other people's opinions if there's differing views, but I don't think you can do it without actually having that fine-tuning and hyperparameter tuning done right.
Somebody else wants to, we leave it there.
One movement that is very common, and we're seeing this, is like the big techs going to, especially in our case, like public clients, like large governments, state level, municipalities, and coming, hey, we have the AI, you can use that for educational purpose, and it's been a disaster. Just mentioning that and highlighting what Shivani said, that we really need very specific data and understanding and contextualization to make and to build an educational solution. Otherwise, it's just not going to work.
Thank you. I think we can close with that. Thank you very much to the panel for your participation.
Thank you. A big applause, please, for this amazing panel. Thank you for all your insights today. Good. I just want to say something about the context is so important. For us that we teach entrepreneurship for kids, I always say something so important about like translating the content versus adapting it to the context. Sometimes whenever you have like kids learning about entrepreneurship and it's just translated, they show the lemonade stand example. And I'm like, we don't do lemonade stand in Colombia. So then it's not relevant, right? So how we don't only translate information, but we adapt the information so it's relevant and adapted to the context for kids, youth, and adults. Perfect. So thank you again to this amazing panel. Next, we are going to move to a conversation between Richard Culata, CEO of ISTE and ASCD, a leader in using innovation and AI to transform learning, and David Evans, Principal Economic Advisor for the Social Sector at the IDB. So please come on stage. Let's give him a hand. No, louder, a louder hand. Eso. I love it. I would love to see how the eso goes into the translation. Very good. Thank you so much, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much for that welcome. A couple of panels ago, we heard the description of students being glassy-eyed in their classes from poor teachers. Now, as we enter the third hour of discussions, I can imagine that a few of you might be tempted, but as Richard commented to me just before the panel, you get to earn your light lunch. So, no, I'm excited. You know, we just had a panel on teachers and and how to strengthen teachers. We then had a panel on how to kind of manage the education system as a whole. I want to bring it back, and it's a real honor to be talking to you, Richard. I want to bring it back to students. So something we chatted about in the run-up to the panel was, one of the many tools that some educators are using is, letting students talk to historical figures, for example, using AI to sort of spark their excitement about learning. Can you talk a little bit about what are the most promising ways you see that students can get effective feedback from artificial intelligence that they may not have been getting before?
Sure. So thank you. Really great to be here, by the way, and awesome to be part of just a phenomenal group of thought leaders in this area. Somehow I got onto this panel that, we'll see if I prove my worth in the next little bit after hearing these amazing people that were up here. But here's the thing. I'm actually going to say what we need to not be doing first when it comes to feedback. I think one of the biggest challenges that we're having right now is we're doing too much of using AI like a search engine. AI is a really bad search engine, and if you're using it as a search engine, you're going to get pretty lame results. It's far more interesting if we can model using AI as a real feedback tool like you're talking about. Some of that is using tools that are specifically designed to provide feedback, but the other is just teaching and modeling better prompts, right? So a far more interesting prompt for me would be to say something like, here is a position that I've written, an argument that I've written. Tell me, if somebody were going to disagree with me, what are the 5 points that they would disagree with me on? That is a far more interesting prompt to put into AI as a student than it would be to just say, what's the answer to blah, right? And we can do that with all kinds of things. We can do that with all kinds of performance. I speak Spanish. I'm not a native Spanish speaker. So often I will write something in Spanish. I will put it in and I will say, what about my phrasing? What about the joke that I've told? What about the example that I've used would flag for a native speaker that I'm not a native speaker? That's a really interesting way to get feedback. And so we can keep going on these examples, but I think it really starts with, I think we want to see like amazing tools. It's not about the tools as much as it is about thinking about how we write better prompts and how we model for students to use more thoughtful prompts than just give me the answer to blank.
So, and building on that, one of the things that, as we think about giving, students great feedback and something you just said about, hey, have them ask good questions. One of the things that we worry about with AI is leapfrogging critical thinking, right? Letting the machine do the work for you, and cheating is a related phenomenon. I know a couple months ago you wrote something on, cheating, and with the phrase, let's not let this crisis go to waste. How do we, is this an overblown concern, and how do we deal with it?
Yeah, it's a great question. And by the way, I wrote a post which got a lot of feedback on talking about how to really deal with cheating in AI, because we're misunderstanding it. And the first thing that we need to understand is, there's two parts of this. One is, if you think cheating is a problem in high school and college, you're right. Okay, let's just get that clear, okay? Good. Now, part two, if you think cheating has been made worse by the acceleration, by the availability of AI, you're wrong. Let's let that one sink in for a second, right? So those two pieces are really critical to understand. There's some great research that my friend Victor Lee has been doing at Stanford University, tracing for years. It's a multi-year study looking at rates of cheating, and the cheating rates are incredibly high. What is interesting is that until now, we didn't really care. Like, I love that we suddenly care. We're like, oh, cheating. We care so much about cheating. Like, really? Because it's been the same for years and we know it. We never really cared. So yes, good that we care about cheating. That's good. If we want to do something about cheating, access to or removing access from AI will have no impact. What will have impact is improving assessments. What will have impact is helping create more meaningful assessments. If I'm giving lame assessments that are asking for just fill in the blank answers, I mean, arguably, is it even cheating if somebody goes and pulls an answer and drops it in there? It's sort of like, I don't know, if you're going to ask me a dumb question, get a dumb answer, I think is kind of how I think about it, right? So we have to think about how do we make assessments that are far more meaningful, that are far, and we talked about, we heard that on this panel a second ago about having assessments that actually have students demonstrate their capabilities. In fact, you would say, you better use AI. You better use AI to help complete this demonstration of your ability, but use it in a way that's helping you really dive deeper into the learning content. And can I say one more thing about that? Sorry. This is a wind me up and watch me go subject. By the way, tradúzcame esto. No sé cómo lo van a decir. Pero look, wind me up and watch me go. So here's the thing. AI is actually a really powerful tool for making assessments that don't suck. So, for example, if you have an assessment that's lame and easy to cheat on, go into AI and say, hey, I'm teaching, dividing fractions for 8th graders. Divide fractions in 8th grade? I don't even know. Dividing fractions for 8th graders. Give me an authentic assessment. Give me some examples of how to do authentic assessment for that particular topic. Most AI tools that are out there will give you some pretty darn good answers. So turn to AI actually as a first step to try to build some better assessments. Okay, I'm done.
No. So just to follow up on that, I think, so that's a great example how we can use AI to make them better. So I teach at the university level, I teach an essay-based course, and maybe this speaks to the quality of my assessments. I fear that it does, right? I look at the quality of AI now, and the next time I teach that course in 6 months, what the quality of AI is going to be. And I am confident that the kinds of essays that students were writing 2 years ago can completely be produced by, And so, besides writing an AI and saying, help me solve my problem, like specifically, how could we imagine solving this and not, I want students to learn to use the AI, but I also want them to learn how to think hard about policy problems without just becoming great prompt designers.
Right. Sure. I think it's a yes and. We actually really do need students to become great prompt designers, and we also need the other piece of it, right? And there's lots of other, look at math and how math has evolved. That's another comment that came up before too, right? We actually need kids to be proficient in using calculators and graphing calculators. Like that's actually really critical. And it doesn't mean that we don't want to be able to have basic math skills, right? So couple thoughts on that. One is, I think it's really interesting to look at using AI as a tool that can generate multiple options and having students be able to justify and explain why they're picking one or the other. There are some things, part of why this is so complex is that we haven't spent enough time thinking about what uniquely human skills are. Right? When we go into schools, we're the largest provider. ISTE and ASCD is the largest provider of AI professional training, professional development for educators. When we go into schools, one of the first things we do is we say, what are uniquely human skills? Skills that should never be replaced by AI. And you know what happens most? You know what the number one answer is? A blank stare. We've never thought about it. We've never thought about what are things that, for all these years since humans, existed, we've never had to justify what being humans are good for. Like, what value do we add? We've never had to justify that. And now all of a sudden we do. And we haven't really gotten that tight. And so I think there are some things that we need to think about. For example, humans are quite good at choosing the right decision when placed with a decision in front of them. They're quite good at that, despite what you might think by living in the DC area over these last couple months. But most humans are quite good at making good choices when there are choices that are put in front of them. They're not good at brainstorming solutions. The human brain, the context of our human brain, our lived experiences, makes it very hard for us to brainstorm solutions to things that we haven't experienced, right? It's what keeps us alive, right? Because we keep ourselves safe by doing the thing we've always done. Makes it really hard for us to brainstorm. AI is great at brainstorming. If you ever want to try that, say, make me a recipe for making chocolate chip cookies. Great. Now make me another one. Now make me 5 more. Now make me 100 more. And it will just keep making different recipes for you. It'll keep creating new solutions as long as you ask. And so that's an example where in a class where you want to encourage deeper thinking, push students to be using AI to help generate solutions and then help them go through the activity of figuring out why this one over that one. See, that strengthens the thing that human brains are good at and gives them help in the area that human brains are just not very good at, right? Those are some of the things that we can start to do. By the way, I have to say one more thing is so much about creating that, back to this culture of cheating again, is about creating a culture, right? Cheating is a cultural issue, not a technological one. And so if you want students to go through the process of writing the paper you're asking for them, they have to see why that matters to them. The number one way to stop cheating is to make sure students see relevance in the assignment that they're being asked to do. And if they don't, none of the rest of it matters. And so if you think about that, and I'm sure you do this in your class, why does writing this paper matter for you? Why is this something that you need to make your life better? If they don't see that connection, you need to hit the emergency brake and spend some time understanding that first, and then move into writing the paper.
So, and this talk about students understanding why this is important. I know you're writing a book right now on, creating classroom experiences that are awesome experiences for students.
Yep.
So
he just leaked that, by the way. I haven't said that publicly anywhere. So you now know that I'm working on a book that's about student experiences.
Coming soon.
Good job.
Exactly. You can Venmo me later. So what are some of the best ways that teachers could use AI to help generate that awesome student experience?
Yeah. I think we need to do a lot more modeling of use with students. So here's a distinction that I want to make. And I spend most of my breathing, life in front of groups of people these days talking about AI and where and how AI is being used. Okay, 98.725% of those conversations are talking about teachers using AI for what I would call efficiency, right? Instead of making a rubric, we'll have AI make the rubric. Instead of writing a letter to parents, we'll have AI write the letter to parents. Instead of like this sort of stuff. Let me be super clear. I want to save teachers time. I want to give them their Saturdays back, right? I want all that we've been talking about, right? But that is not a very helpful way to prepare the next generation to thrive in an AI world. We also need to be modeling and preparing young people to use AI in effective ways. So if in your schools, if in your discussions, all of the use cases are how do we help teachers save time, you need to start balancing that by asking some questions like, how do we help students practice using AI in meaningful ways? There are lots of examples. We don't have a ton of time, but let me give you a couple. One of them we just talked about, which is use it as a brainstorming partner, right? Help learn to use AI as a brainstorming buddy. That's a really great way to use AI. Here's another one. Use AI to help visualize complex information in stories. We talk a lot about text-based AI. I think some of the most exciting generative AI are image generators, right? We do at ISTE, we actually have an art competition. AI generated art. So AI is creating the images, but the stories that are being told are absolutely from the students. And so being able to, I was working with this is an elementary school, and they were talking about designing cities of the future. And the kids were trying to do these drawings. The kids knew that their drawings were terrible, right? When you have like a fifth grader who's drawing in crayons, like they know they're old enough to know that this doesn't look like what they have in their mind, which is amazing. And so we worked with the teacher who said, all right, let's use AI to help generate what you are envisioning as these cities of the future that are ecologically friendly, whatever. And so they started going into it, prompting and reprompting, and the grass is supposed to be on the side. No, there's a waterfall out this, right? Yes, that's it, right? And they finally get this image, and they're like, it's what I've had in my brain this whole time, but I haven't been able to express. That's a great way to model using AI. Let me just share one more, because you started with it. Using AI as a feedback tool, right? Using AI as a tool, helping model with kids, going to AI and saying, give me feedback on this thing. You know that you can put AI into feedback mode, right? Do you all know this? You can go into any of the LLMs and you can give it a prompt that says, I want you to check my understanding on this particular topic. Do not give me the answer, but please prompt me to help me get there. You all know that you can do that? You can put that in, and from there on, the LLM will be in feedback mode. And so then it will say, all right, explain to me this particular concept in history or whatever it is. And it will say, what do you know? And it'll start to ask me questions back and forth. It won't give me the answer, but it'll start to show where I need more help. You all can create that right now. One of the things that somebody said to me the other day I thought was super interesting. They said English or Spanish, or Portuguese in this case, is the new hot programming language. Right? You remember for a long time it was like Python is the hot programming language, or like Java or C++. English/Spanish/Portuguese is the new hot programming language, because you can now program AI to do anything that you want it to do just using plain language, whatever language you speak. That's what we need to be teaching and modeling. So stop talking about saving time. keep saving time on making rubrics a little faster, but expand the conversation to be talking about how are we modeling using AI as a tool that we can create the types of tutors that we need and feedback engines that we need.
So I think that's fabulous. Something you talked about a few minutes ago is teacher professional development, all the work that you guys do with that. I've spent a lot of my career thinking about that. I have seen, a lot of teachers over the years, many incredibly motivated teachers who want nothing more than to transform their children's lives. Others teachers who went into the profession because, well, that was kind of the best job they could get. They weren't that excited into it. One of the most recurring themes, I think, in today's event is inequality and the potential to either exacerbate or I don't know about eliminate, but reduce inequality. So which direction do you think it's going to go? And like with teacher professional development, I can exactly imagine this thing. I come to your training, and if I'm an inspiring teacher, I see these tools, I'm like, yeah! And I go and I teach my rich kids like how to sort of change the world. Or I'm kind of a phoned-it-in teacher, and I'm like, wait, I can get my Saturdays back? And that's kind of all I do. And so is that what's going to happen?
Here, the unsatisfying answer, but the truthful one is it depends. It depends entirely on what we choose to do. So much of the energy is being placed around, are these tools good? Are these tools not? I hope what you're hearing from this conversation is it depends so much more on what we do with the tools, how we model and practice using them, than it does on what the tool itself is designed to do. Tool design matters, like let's be clear, but we have so much control over the outcome of that question. And so much of it is just how are we going to model and use this. Let me give one quick example of something that we're trying to do. We look at schools of education, teacher preparation programs. They are continuing to create educators who largely are prepared for classrooms that don't exist anymore. So we've started a coalition of now 150 schools of education from the Americas and some other parts of the world that are coming together to say, what does it look like if we were to prepare educators to thrive in an AI world? That's an interesting conversation. So we're trying to start from the beginning and say, how do we not we're so good at retrofitting in education, right? We're always like, oh, this thing happened, let's retrofit it back into the system. It's exhausting, it doesn't work well, right? And so this is one of those cases where we have a chance to get ahead of it and not retrofit, but actually make it work. And by the way, the only way that AI systems are going to be awesome is if educator fingerprints are all over them.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we have 1 minute left. Last question. A lot of people in the room from the Inter-American Development Bank, from the World Bank, from other organizations, what they do professionally is they go around and they advise governments. Governments across the region, across the world are already trying to get their fingers around this. A lot of countries with connectivity issues and others with fewer. If you had a piece of advice for these people who are going out and advising governments how to start thinking about AI in education, AI for a student-centered experience, what's the thing that they should not forget?
I think the biggest thing that's getting forgotten is finding ways to explore before coming up with policies and decisions. I was working with a government, I will not say who it was, we work with lots of ministries around the world, and they had this AI policy that they created. First of all, an AI policy is a kind of bad idea because well, we can go into that later. But like, if I were to show a bunch of tools to you and say which one is AI and which one isn't, you wouldn't be able to tell. So if I have a policy and you can't even tell which tool is AI and which isn't, like that's a problem. But anyway, that's a different conversation. So this is our AI policy really. And I was reading it through, and after a little bit, I stopped and I was like, you haven't used AI, have you? I mean, you haven't really used AI. And everyone's like, well, I mean, I was like, no, like, honestly, you haven't really used AI, have you? And I was like, well, not really. I was like, don't be writing policies when you haven't actually taken the time to explore. It is so obvious. I can read a policy in a second and tell if the person that wrote it has really used AI before. So what school systems, what ministries need to be doing is encouraging structured exploration, right? Finding ways to explore some of these new things that we're talking about and sharing what's working. You can still do that by putting safety bounds in place. You can still do that by protecting student data. We have a product called the EdTech Index, which talks about this, which is actually mentioned in the IDP report, that can help do some of this. But explore and learn. we want to jump so quickly to tell other people how to do it mode that we aren't taking the time to really explore. If anybody tells you they're an AI expert, say, thank you, time for you to leave my office, right? Because they're lying. Nobody is an AI expert, right? We really need to be in exploration and embrace that. It's okay to be in exploration mode, but that's the thing that we need to be doing right now. And by the way, I mentioned it quickly, but this idea, the report that just came out, the AI report from IDB, it's awesome. And I don't say that about a lot of reports. I don't get excited about reports very easily. There's some really good stuff in there. So take the time to read that and help be the people that encourage exploration and thinking more broadly than just using this great tool as a kind of not very good search engine.
Thank you so much. Where I come from, the applause that we do is a round of applause where you go in a round.
Thank you, guys.
Round of applause for Richard Kulata. This has been fabulous. Thank you so much.
That was great. That's great Spanish also, but it's great Spanish. Well, to start closing, I think we really need a big, big, big round of applause for all of our speakers, our guests, our panelists that are still here back there. It's really been amazing and it's been really inspiring. I think we all live here with a different mindset. Before we close, I really want to show you, how my sisters and I have really accepted this challenge, because remember, this is all about how we all in this audience accept this challenge and what each of us is able to do in our day-to-day basis and whatnot. At the Beast Nation, we are super convinced that we should be including those communities that you would have never thought that would be in the AI conversation into it, right? At the Beast Nation, we started as an e-learning platform 7 years ago, and as of today, we've trained over 100,000 people around workforce development and entrepreneurship. But we soon realized that we needed to start training more people on AI. But that's how crazy we are. We thought, e-learning, well, Latin America has very different and unique contexts. So why don't we take this to a WhatsApp training, method? And that started to sound crazy, back in a couple of years ago when we started to do that. But we realized that we needed to really teach people using the methods that they use to consume content today. So we started creating vertical, short, TikTok-styled capsules and videos that we send over WhatsApp that we create with artificial intelligence. So like my avatar, my real avatar, which is awesome because it requires no people, no training, no production crew, no lighting, no anything. And it allows us to have real-time, very updated content that we send to thousands of people in the region using WhatsApp. So we are really converting the way in which we train, and it has allowed us to do many things. Very recently, we have just finished to train 100 indigenous youth in La Guajira, Colombia on artificial intelligence. We've trained last year over 500 youth, young adults around workforce readiness, and they are ready to start their careers in a different ways. Right now, we are training over 30,000 public servants in artificial intelligence, and everything we do is based on neurosciences. That's how we create the content, but we make sure we're using different styles. That TikTok style content has really been game changing, and then using WhatsApp, which is a method in which, at least in LATAM, that's how people is normally consuming content. So why do I share all of this with you? Because we've accepted this challenge and we want to show you, we are 3 social entrepreneur females from Cartagena, Colombia. That's where we were born. And we are doing big stuff with very little. I think you don't need a big budget. I don't think you need, to be in Silicon Valley or some office in order to create some great some great impact. Because for us, artificial intelligence is really not just about innovation. For us, this is about impacting. This is about creating impact in a different and powerful way. And that's what we love to do, and I am sure everybody here, when we realize how we bring technology. We bring really understanding how technology works. When we bring purpose, when we bring the vision, and when we bring love for education, which I think all of us have here, I'm sure we can create some great, great, amazing impact.
Thank you, Karen. And now we're getting to an end. And, my final message is that in a world that we are going to be soon populated by more AI assistants than humans, the role of artificial intelligence in education is no longer a debate, but a reality. AI is in everything that we're doing, in how we work, how we live, how we communicate. However, I think that the most powerful skill in today's world is definitely not AI. The most important or the super skill, like Mackenzie said, is actually learning how to learn. And Alvin Toffler said it best. The illiterate of the 21st century will no longer be those who cannot read or write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and actually relearn. In today's world, AI can explain a concept, write an essay, code apps, and analyze problems even faster than most humans can think. So the debate is no longer about if we can access information. It has always been about getting the right answers, but now it is about asking the right questions. So we no longer need people that know absolutely everything. We need people that can actually learn how to adapt. We need people that know how to grow through change. People that can actually be flexible, and that is very different from what we were taught when we were in school. In a world that never stops changing, your ability to grow is actually the greatest form of stability, and that to me is just shocking. In a world where AI knows apparently all the answers, the right skill is actually knowing what to ask. And if you leave today with one thing, I want it to be that we need to stay curious, that we don't know what is going to happen and we don't know the exact way that we need to do things, but we do know that we need to unlearn and relearn. And that is actually going to be the greatest skill that we're going to have. The world doesn't belong to people that know everything. And this is what we were told. The world now belongs to people that want to continue to learn always. Right, Steffi? Yes. So we already talked about artificial intelligence. We talk about education. We talk about the amazing things that could happen if we put education, policy, and purpose together in one room. So I want to tell you today that after listening to all the panelists, I could just think that, like Karen say, today to make a difference, you don't need to have a lot of budget. You don't need to be in Silicon Valley and be the super techie that we used to think before, because AI is no longer in the labs, right? Now it's accessible for more people. In my case, let me tell you a story. Karen graduated summa cum laude from college. Daniela graduated summa cum laude from college, and I'm the youngest. And I told my parents, the important thing is that we have health. That's what is important. I graduated with an okay GPA, but based on the traditional educational system, I would have been a failure, right? Because I was not an A student at all. I talked a lot, and I realized that I had other strengths. And just like me, more than like 90% of the people, I think we have other strengths and we are not A plus students, right? So our invitation today is just to say, Karen, Daniel, and Stephanie, we're three Colombian Cartageneras making a difference with what we had. And I think that's the biggest takeaway. You're in my mind. Thank you. I think that's the biggest takeaway of today. You don't need to be a pro. You don't need to be like a master's in AI. You can do whatever you can do from your perspective. If you're a teacher, you can bring a difference to your room. If you're a student, you can bring a difference. If you're a policymaker, you can bring a difference. If you have a startup, you can bring and make a difference to the education landscape. So that's our takeaway. That's our invitation. Don't try to predict, like we say at the beginning, the future, because most of the times we're going to be wrong. So let's try to do whatever we can to transform the present of education today. Thank you so much, and you all deserve an oh la la clap on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Oh la la. And I think you earned the lunch as well. Wait, let's take a picture.
Yay.
Pero for that, you have to come here. See? Yes. The picture? Yes. No, listen, super important. Please download this education, AI education publication. It's amazing. Download it first and then come for the picture, please.